Hello, everybody. My name is Tom Burns, and welcome. Oh, hang on, I've got me. Oh no, I'm not ending the stream. Why have I? Oh my god, sorry, it's all going wrong. Volume's up on my phone. I've gone on the stream ending page instead of the intermission page, which is where you can see me. There we go. Sorry about that. I'm not ending the stream. I've just started it. Um, Yeah, hello everybody. Welcome to our part two of the 2025 wrap up. What's the news 2025 wrap up? Now I do apologise. I'll just get this out of the way. I do apologise for not doing it on New Year's Eve. Unfortunately, out of all days of the year to not be too well, I wasn't too well on New Year's Eve. Luckily, I didn't have any plans, so nothing really. It didn't really affect anything apart from the stream. The plan was to do it. The plan was to do it. Well, what are we today? Sunday. The plan was to do it yesterday, but to be honest, it just completely slipped my mind. By the time I realised it was a bit late to do it, so um, yeah, thought we'd do it tonight. Um, Anyway, before we go any further, and talk. Well, actually, before I introduce my co-host, let's just run down the things that we're going to be talking about in this stream. So, of course, in part one, we talked about the big events of 2025, big things that happened, the big deaths of 2025. Went into some detail about a few of them. I don't believe I've received any comments on that stream. I expected to get some potential hate comments for some of the stuff we said about a few of the people, but it was all well deserved. In all fairness, we don't just say bad stuff about people for the sake of it. But anyway, I won't get into that. But yeah, so we talked about that, and we talked about the big deaths of 2025 and big events and stuff like that. And we wanted to try and do it all in one stream, but we just ran out of time because we ended up talking quite in length about a few people who died last year. So yeah, so this stream is going to consist of the year 2025 in wrestling. So whether that be WWE, I don't really have anything to say about AEW, but I think my co-host does. So I'll pass that over to him when we get onto that. But yeah, WWE, AEW, the John Cena retirement tour, of course, which was the big part, or like probably the biggest part of wrestling in 2025. Um, so we're going to talk about that, and we're also going to talk about our personal highlights of 2025, what really stood out for us, and the things that we did in 2025 that will live in our memories for a long time. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. But before we do get into anything else, I will introduce my co-host, formerly known as Professor Wigglytuff, now known as the Real Soft Cat. He is here, of course he is, and without further ado, the Real Soft Cat.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Tom. Firstly, a happy new year to you, Tom, and to everyone
Happy New Year to you
watching and listening.
and to everybody.
Hope you all had a good Christmas and festive period, and whatever else it is you celebrate. And we're back for part two. There's still an awful lot to discuss. But here we are, and yeah, looking forward to running down the rest of 2025, as it were, before we look ahead to the year that is going to be 2026 and what's to come. But for now, I hand back to you, Tom.
Thank you. Yeah, also another thing that we are going to be talking about as well is what we're looking forward to this year. So the year 2026 is obviously going to be a few things happening this year, and we're going to be talking about that. So, but let's get on with the year of wrestling. I think that'll be the thing that we'll probably talk the most about. So probably best to start with it. And of course, the year of wrestling always start, at least in WWE, always starts with the Royal Rumble, and of course that is coming around very soon, 31st of January at I believe 7 p.m. in the UK it starts. Obviously because it's in Saudi Arabia. But anyway, so yeah, so in the start at the start of the year in wrestling, at least in WWE, we have the Royal Rumble, and last year's Royal Rumble winner was not who I expected it to be. I think a lot of us expected John Cena to win the Royal Rumble and go on to WrestleMania and get the 17th championship. Of course, we had no idea what was to happen between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, of course, but we'll get to that soon enough. But what I liked about the Rumble this year, at least the men's Rumble, I thought the women's Rumble was quite predictable. I said it back way back early last year before the Rumble. I said, I don't know if I said it on stream, but I definitely said it to my co-host. I said, if Charlotte returns, Charlotte is winning that Rumble, and I'm sure I said it more than once. And she did return, and she did win that Rumble because I just didn't see anybody else winning it when she returned because she's seen as one of the biggest stars, the one of the biggest women stars that the company's ever had. So they're not going to have such a big return and then not have her win the Rumble. It just wouldn't happen. So I knew if she did turn up, she was going to win the Rumble, and lo and behold, she did. I mean, it was a good Rumble. I enjoyed it, but it was, like I say, very, very predictable. And then you had the men's Rumble, which, again, I thought was going to be predictable, but I didn't mind it because it was predictable in a good way. Because a lot of us wanted to see John Cena win the Rumble and go on and get his 17th championship at WrestleMania. I'm not saying everybody did, but I know a lot of people did. And then so the Rumble was good. A few returns, and then obviously we had John Cena, and then it came down to Jey Uso and John Cena, and I had no doubt in my mind that John Cena was going to win because I thought, well, there's no way Jey Uso is going to get a Royal Rumble win. It's just not going to happen. As much as he is very popular and as much as he's getting a major push at the moment, I don't think he's ready to win the Rumble. I thought maybe this year, 2026, would be his year to win the Rumble. Well, I was very, very wrong. John Cena looked like he was going to win the Rumble, and it didn't happen. Jey Uso ended up winning the Rumble to the surprise of a lot of people. And I liked it in a way because as much as I wanted John Cena to win, even though it would have been predictable, I quite liked the unpredictability of the fact that Jey Uso won the Rumble because, in my opinion, it wasn't predictable at all. I don't. I don't think when I watch a lot of different wrestling streamers who do a lot of wrestling reactions and stuff like that. I watch at least 4 or 5, and not one of them in their predictions said Jey Uso. So nobody. I'm not saying nobody thought, but nobody that I watched thought that Jey Uso was going to win the Rumble. So it wasn't really a predictable winner. And then when he did, the reaction he got after the match was amazing, and he got that push all the way to WrestleMania, of course, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, it was a good Royal Rumble PLE. I quite enjoyed it, and I liked the unpredictability of the winner of the men's Rumble. I did because so much now in this day and age with dirt sheets and stuff like that, winners are not really spoilt, but rumors come out about, oh, this is the person that is rumored to be winning the Rumble, and usually the rumors are correct, so it is sort of a spoiler, and I hate that. I miss the days of going into the Royal Rumble having absolutely zero idea who's going to win it, or at least have like 4 to 5 different people who I think could possibly win the Rumble. You know, I hate that it is nearly every year you're going into it pretty much knowing who's going to win the Rumbles. I will say, going into the Rumbles this year, I'm a bit up in the air as to who's going to win them because I'm not really sure. I've seen a few rumors, but nothing concrete. So I don't. But we'll get to that when we come to our 2026. What we're looking forward to and stuff. I'll get to that a bit later. But yeah, I do miss them days where you just didn't know who was going to win the Rumble. But of course, with how big social media is these days and how many, wrestling reporters there are these days, and dirt sheet pages and stuff like that, it's inevitable it's going to get spoiled. Which is why I don't like to. If I watch a major PLE, whether it be Rumble, whether it be SummerSlam, whether it be WrestleMania, I like to watch them live. Because if I don't watch them live, I always get them spoiled, and I hate it. It does my head in. But yeah, the start of the year, for wrestling was it started pretty strong with an unpredictable men's Rumble winner, Charlotte Flair returning. Although it was predictable she was going to win, it's still a big return for WWE because she is one of the biggest. Even though I'm not a big fan of her, she is one of the biggest women's, one of the biggest women's wrestlers, um, one of the biggest women's wrestling stars of all time. So it was a big return to happen, and she was out for quite a while. So it was a big start to 2025 for wrestling. In terms of any other wrestling company, I don't really watch any other wrestling company. So if there was anything major that happened in January in any other company, I have no idea. But I'm sure my co-host will mention if there is anything because he will probably know better than me. But for now, in terms of January for wrestling, I think that's all I have to say. I'll pass you over to my co-host. No, hello.
Thank you, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Tom. Yeah, not an awful lot for me to add to that about January. We had the Royal Rumble. Um, it was up to a point predictable. I didn't get the winner correct because I was adamant that John Cena was going to win the Royal Rumble. Was it the right decision to let Jey Uso win? Well, I mean, ultimately, Cena still obviously got his, he got number 17 either way and still main evented WrestleMania. So you'd argue that didn't make a difference. But, it's not as though anymore that the winner of the Royal Rumble is then going to go on and, headline WrestleMania. It's not quite as how would I say? It's really not like that, like it used to be. I'm sure you agree with me on that. So, but yeah, Charlotte Flair winning again. Did she need the win? No, but it happened. Otherwise, I can't remember an awful lot of that Royal Rumble. There used to be a time when we'd watch pay-per-views and enjoy the whole show, match to match. But these days we just tend to tune in for the one or two matches we really want, get the result, and then that's it. But yeah, that was January for me. Obviously, got the Royal Rumble this year in Saudi Arabia. We'll talk about that a bit later, I'm sure. But yeah, that's all I have to say on January.
Okay. Well, of course, February. I mean, February was when Elimination Chamber happened, of course, and I do apologize if I'm missing anything from any other wrestling company. I don't watch any other wrestling company, so I wouldn't know. But if my co-host does know anything, because he probably know more than me about other companies, then I'm sure he'll mention it when he has his say. But yeah, in terms of February, obviously Elimination Chamber happened, and it was a solid PLE. The Elimination Chamber matches were pretty good. John Cena winning the Elimination Chamber match, and he won that opportunity to go to WrestleMania, to face because Jey Uso had already chose Gunter, so it was to face whoever won was going to face Cody. But of course, going into that PLE, we had that thing hanging over Cody. Was he going to sell his soul to The Rock or not? Was he going to finally turn heel and sell his soul to The Rock? Now, a lot of people said that they thought potentially he might do that. This might be the point where he turns heel, because nobody envisioned or even predicted what actually happened. Because how could you? But we had that, and then so after John Cena won, John Cena was still in the ring. Cody came down to congratulate Cena, and they sort of shook hands. They had a hug, and that was your WrestleMania main event there: John Cena versus Cody Rhodes. And then The Rock appeared, and of course, with that whole thing looming over Cody, was he going to sell his soul? Of course, we knew that The Rock was going to appear, and he did, and he came down to the ring, and he asked Cody just very bluntly, "Are you going to sell your soul?" And Cody said no. and then he told The Rock to get fucked, basically, very bluntly, and he did. And we thought that was the end of it. We thought we were going to get a face versus face WrestleMania main event, two men that really respected each other, and we thought that was the way it was going to go. And then, in my opinion, the biggest moment in wrestling in 2025 happened. John Cena, after, when did he turn face? 2004? I think he turned face in 2004. Maybe it was even before that. But anyway, he was only a heel for a year of his his very first year in WWE. He was a heel. He was Doctor Thugonomics and all that. So he hadn't been a face for a long, long time, over 20 years. And John Cena gave Cody a hug. The Rock did the sort of throat slit thing that the Undertaker did. John Cena's face changed completely, and then John Cena low blowed Cody Rhodes, and then Cody Rhodes then was attacked by not only John Cena but The Rock and of all people Travis Scott as well, and that left us with what's going to happen here. John Cena's turned heel. This is huge. Where's the story going to go from here? John Cena has this ability to, whatever they throw at him, he turns it into gold. So we all thought that this was going to be this amazing story, that he was going to, this is going to be an amazing heel turn. And don't get me wrong, when he turned up for the first time after that heel turn and did that promo where he was having a go at the crowd and stuff, I thought it was amazing. It was so weird to see John Cena in this heel character, because I've never really seen him in this heel character before, apart from like sort of his first year in the business. So it was really weird to see, but it was refreshing. It was refreshing, and I thought, this could be good. John Cena's obviously wanted to turn heel once, one more time before he retires, which is fair enough. This is going to be amazing. This is going to, he's got The Rock involved in this story. This is going to go far. And then it didn't. But we'll get onto that a bit more, down the road in the year of wrestling in 2025. But yeah, definitely a big moment. Probably one of the biggest wrestling moments of all time, just behind the Hulk Hogan heel turn. The Hulk Hogan heel turn had a massive impact on the future of WCW. It was far more impactful than John Cena's. But John Cena's is still a big moment because he wasn't a heel for 20 odd years. And then to turn heel after all that time was pretty big, when none of us thought that he was going to turn heel. It would have been more likely in our minds that Cody was going to turn heel than John Cena. So it was a big moment. It was a shocking moment, and I really do wish that they'd done more with it. But we'll get onto more of that a bit later. But yeah, that was for me the month of February in wrestling. And yeah, I'll pass you on to my co-host.
Thank you. Yeah, John Cena's heel turn. First of all, before I dissect the way the heel turn turned out, obviously it was significant because other than his sort of Doctor of Thugonomics persona, or sort of alluding to it, or spoofing it in that Firefly Funhouse match with Bray Wyatt, this was probably the first and only time John Cena turned heel. And it was impactful, not, as you said, in the way Hulk Hogan's heel turn was. That was a very different set of circumstances and a different era and a different company, and indeed, something that had never really been done before. Nevertheless, it was still a shock to many. But nothing was really, in my honest opinion, nothing was really done with it or about it. I think it made his victory at WrestleMania. We knew he was going to win, but it just made it all the more sort of, well, obviously he's gonna, he's the heel. He's going to win as the heel. It just kind of took away that element of surprise. Had it been, say, two faces going at each other, had he turned heel at WrestleMania, that would have been more shocking. That would have been more impactful. That would have been more memorable. But it didn't happen. On top of that, I've said this to you multiple times. in my honest opinion, if you're in the final year of John Cena's in-ring career and you want him to face all these iconic opponents, then the one person who I think he should have faced somehow for title 17, or indeed in his final match, should have been The Rock. They should have had a Rock Cena Part 3, given that both men had faced each other, one win apiece, and to kind of close the curtain not only on his career, but on bring the curtain down on what I believe is one of the greatest rivalries, if not the greatest rivalry in wrestling history between the two greatest wrestlers of all time. They really didn't run with that, and that was disappointing. You know, what was the point in having Travis Scott involved if not to use him again? You know, what was the point in having The Rock involved with all this, you're going to sell me your soul, blah, blah, blah bullshit, and then not have him appear again? It didn't make sense. It really didn't make sense. And look, I love Cody Rhodes. He's a great guy. But, I mean, The Rock Cena Part 3 would have been a far bigger main event. The main event of main events. It would have been spectacular.
Absolutely.
And I think, maybe they should have done something along those lines where, I don't know, The Rock stripped Cody of his title or something. And then he challenges John Cena to a match at WrestleMania, and Cena gets title 17 and then drops the belt to Cody later on down the line. That's how it should have been, but it's happened. We're probably, we won't ever see it again. I mean, never say never, but I think it's unlikely we're going to get Rock Cena Part 3 now.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's how I would have done the heel turn, but there you go. Over to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because, so much happened between the heel turn and then, so much happened in that year after that heel turn in terms of like personal stuff outside of the ring with The Rock and Travis, and it was a difficult one. And John Cena did, reveal this in an interview he did after he had his last match, and he said, "Look, he understood that the fans were disappointed with the retirement tour because they expected more because of how it started with the heel turn and stuff like that." And he said, "Look, I'm disappointed in a way as well." He said, because we had such a good story to tell. He said, "Boy, did we have a good story to tell with, with The Rock being involved in my turn, and with Travis as well." He said, "God," he said, "it was a good story we had written." He said, "But in the end, it didn't work out. The Rock had his own stuff to get on with. He didn't have the time he thought he did, and it was just a case of, unfortunately, he was just too busy." And that was it. Like literally, that was the reasons that John Cena gave. And then obviously, it was very well documented that Travis had a big falling out with WWE, so that's why he wasn't used again. Not that I'm that bothered about that, but I would have understood if he'd appeared again. Obviously because he was there for the Cena heel turn, so it would have made sense for him to appear again. Even though I'm not that bothered, but I wasn't that bothered and he didn't turn up again. But I would have understood. But yeah, it was disappointing how it went, and I wish it had been different. I wish The Rock had the time to, come back and potentially have one more match with Cena. I mean, he wasn't even there in person for Cena's last match. He did a video message, which I thought was really, he must have been extremely busy to not turn up for Cena's last match. That's all I'm saying. Um, but it is what it is, and unfortunately, we got what we got. And I'm sure we'll talk more about Cena's retirement tour as we go through the year of wrestling in 2025. But yeah, it was a
Or
good
maybe look at it in another way. The Rock not turning up, maybe, I don't know, questions would have been asked by the fans of, what happened to the storyline, blah, blah, blah. How does he suddenly just turn up and become a face again? Or dare I even say it, maybe The Rock didn't want to steal that moment, because obviously every time The Rock returns, there's always a big reaction. Maybe he wanted the focus to be solely on John Cena. And, with all due respect, even with the likes of The Undertaker, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, CM Punk all there, none of them were going to garner a bigger reaction than John Cena or The Rock.
No.
The only other person I could think of that probably would have done, or as big as John Cena, would have been Steve Austin. But, I don't ever recall Steve Austin or John Cena ever having some kind of an interaction.
No, I don't either.
So that was disappointing. I would have liked to have seen Steve Austin at some point, but
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't have everybody. But that's just my sort of take on why maybe The Rock didn't show up. But nevertheless, as you said, he must have been extremely busy if he had to record a message rather than come and see John Cena face to face.
Yeah. Absolutely, it is. I mean, the heel turn could have been so much better, but it is what it is. We got what we got, and like I said, we'll talk more about the retirement tour as we go through the year of wrestling in 2025. But yeah, that was February, and it was a pretty good February. The Elimination Chamber was a solid PLE. It had the big heel turn, and then we go into March. Now, March is a bit of a weird one because there was no PLE in March because you go from Elimination Chamber, you have a big break, and then you go into WrestleMania. So it's the build to WrestleMania. And, it. So I don't really know what. I'm trying to think of what actually happened in March of note, really, apart from obviously the build. Apart from obviously the build up to WrestleMania and the build up to like the Cena and Cody match, and
well, they did Raw and SmackDown in the UK, didn't they?
they did, but I don't know if anything really massively of note happened on them shows.
No, I mean they did. I think was it SmackDown they did in Glasgow.
Yeah.
And then they did Raw and SmackDown in London, which I attended both. Nothing really of note except a Cena Cody confrontation and Cena and Cody laying out Cena. But other than that, yeah, those were John Cena's final appearances in both London and Glasgow, respectively. Yeah. Indeed, I think that was his final UK. Well, notwithstanding Comic Cons, but that was his final UK appearances.
Yeah. But yeah, so I like I said, I don't watch any of the wrestling companies, so something massive might have happened in another wrestling company, but I don't know.
No, nothing that comes to the top of my mind with regards to. I mean, I'll just make the disclaimer now with AEW or TNA. I don't follow them that closely. I might watch them occasionally for a match or two, but I'm not. There are only certain wrestlers that I follow, namely in AEW occasionally. I mean, the one that I follow the most is, as my host knows, Hikaru Shida. Big fan of Willow Nightingale. Otherwise, I can't say I'm a massive AEW fan.
No. Yeah, so that's March really. Not much else to really talk about there in March. But then April, of course, in my opinion, well, not in my opinion. I expect, in most people's opinions, the biggest month in the wrestling calendar. Especially seeing as WrestleMania seems to be in April every year now. Because sometimes it was in late March, sometimes it'd be in April. So, but now consistently for a fair few years now, it's been in April. And of course, WrestleMania came around, WrestleMania 41. And I loved the stage setup. I thought it was great. I knew it was going to be a decent one because it's Las Vegas, casinos and all that sort of stuff. So I knew it was going to be sort of like casino related. And it was, and it was brilliant. It was a brilliant stage. I always, look forward to seeing the WrestleMania stages every year. And WrestleMania 40 is disappointing me, really. All it was a big X and L for 40, and that was it. It was really disappointing. but 39s was good, and then 39s was very good, and then 41s was very good as well. I expect, we'll get to that later anyway when we talk about 2026 stuff. But yeah, WrestleMania Night 1, of course, you had the opening match of Night 1 being Gunter versus Jey Uso. Hi, Nathan. And, it was a good match. It was a solid match. I'm good, thank you. Hope you're okay. It was a good match. It was a solid match. A lot of people said it wasn't a great match. I disagree. I think it was a good match. I mean, it wasn't amazing, but it was a solid opening to a WrestleMania weekend. And of course, as we know, Jey Uso did walk out the victor there by a lot of shocking a lot of people. Not that he won, but the way he won, he made Gunter tap out to a sleeper hold, which is Gunter's move, or at least one of the moves that Gunter uses a lot. So it was a very shocking moment. Jey Uso finally getting on top with the World Heavyweight Championship. Um, I'm not going to go into detail about every single match, but only the ones that were really memorable to me. Of course, I'm trying to remember if it was night 1 or night 2. I think was Tiffany Stratton Charlotte Flair night 1 or night 2? I think it was night 2.
I can't remember.
I think it was night 2 because they usually have one Rumble winner on one night, one Rumble winner on the second night. So Jey Uso kicked off night 1. Yeah, I'm right there. Yeah, so then you would have had the triple threat match between Rhea, Io, and Bianca for the championship. Io was the champion at the time, and a lot of people are saying it was one of the best matches of last year, and I have to agree. The three women put on one hell of a match, and I knew it was going to be a good match because Bianca's good in the ring, Rhea's good in the ring, and Io is just fucking amazing. I honestly don't think she gets the credit she deserves. She's getting a lot of credit these days, but she still doesn't get the credit she deserves. She's just amazing.
She gets a lot of credit from me.
Yeah. She gets a lot of credit from the fans. The fans love her. I just don't think she gets a lot of credit, within the, the higher ups in WWE. But anyway, that's a different matter altogether. So yeah, that was a great match, and Io ended up retaining. Bianca being pinned for the first time at WrestleMania, which was a big moment. Of course, and then obviously we've not really seen Bianca since. We've seen her once at Evolution, which we'll get to a bit later on. But yeah, Bianca's been out pretty much the whole year. But the only thing I know that she injured was a knuckle, and as far as I'm aware, knuckle injury does not take this long to sort out. So I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, yeah. So that was a great match, and then I'm trying to remember the main event of night 1. Was that the main event of night 1? No, it wasn't. What was the main event of night 1? Sorry. It's just gone out of my head. Oh no, of course. How did I forget? So the main event of WrestleMania Night 1, WrestleMania 41 Night 1, was of course the triple threat match between Seth Rollins, CM Punk, and Roman Reigns. A match where a number of things could have happened, because obviously Paul Heyman was a big pawn in this match. Was he going to side with CM Punk and completely betray the tribal chief Roman Reigns, who he had been with for years? Was he going to betray his best friend CM Punk and side with Roman Reigns and still be the wise man for Roman Reigns, the tribal chief? Or was he going to do the unthinkable and not only betray his best friend, but betray his tribal chief and side with Seth freaking Rollins? A lot of people, predicted that, predicted each scenario, said that this was going to happen, said that was going to happen. And in the end, as we know, Paul Heyman got in the ring, low blowed CM Punk, and betrayed CM Punk and Roman Reigns and helped Seth freaking Rollins win. In my opinion, knowing what we know now, not the right decision, because I don't think it's worked out. I do not think that Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins have the same chemistry as what CM Punk and Paul Heyman had in the past, and Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman have had. I just don't think it worked. But that's just my opinion. But yeah, that was the main event at night one. It was a very good main event. It was going to be. You got three of the greatest. Three of the greatest to ever grace a wrestling ring in the same ring at the same time facing each other. It was going to be good. And it was. And Seth Rollins picking up the win because of Paul Heyman's betrayal was a shocking moment. And yeah, it was a good way to end what was a pretty decent night of WrestleMania. And of course, you had WrestleMania Night 2, where you had the likes of Charlotte Flair versus Tiffany Stratton. Everybody thought that Charlotte Flair was going to do what she does and bury another up and coming talent in Tiffany Stratton. Did not happen. Tiffany Stratton got the shocking win over Charlotte Flair, came away with the championship and a chipped tooth. But it was a good match. It was a good match between the women. Not the best, but it was a good match. And of course, like I say, Tiffany Stratton came away with the win, which nobody really thought was going to happen. So again, unpredictable, which I liked. And then I'm trying to remember what happened on night two. Nothing else that I can think of that sticks in my mind. And of course, you had the main event. You had John Cena versus Cody Rhodes for the undisputed WWE Championship. In a match that was a bit of a weird one. It was the first match John Cena was having as a heel. We didn't know what he was going to be like. We didn't know what he was going to do. And in the end, he acted like any other heel, really, with cheap shots. And then it ended up using the championship to Cody's face and then an AA to win his never seen 17 championship. And he became the last real champion, although he wasn't the last real champion, as we now know. But yeah, it was a decent way to end WrestleMania weekend. I mean, it could have been such a better match. It wasn't the best, but it is what it is. But yeah, it was a solid WrestleMania. Not the best, but not the worst by any means. But yeah, it was good. And I'm trying to think if anything else really happened in April. Not really that I can think of. WrestleMania's
I
off to a
mean,
good.
we could have a brief. Just having to. I'm just looking up the Hall of Fame inductions for 2026. If we want to briefly mention those.
You mean 2025?
2025, yes. Sorry.
I mean, yeah, of course, yeah.
So I'm just bringing it up to remind ourselves who we had. So we had. We'll talk about some of the ones that the. We'll talk about some of the other ones first. So we had in the legacy wing we had Ivan Koloff, a former WWF, or when it was then called the WWF champion, famous for ending Bruno Sammartino's 2,803-day reign as champion. So if we're going to talk about streaks, wow, what a streak that was. We had Dory Funk Sr., who was inducted as well. The late father of the late Dory Funk Jr. and indeed Terry Funk Jr., Terry Funk as well. Rest in peace. And we had for the first. Sorry, we'll come on to that in a moment. And Kamala, famous for his Ugandan giant gimmick and for his feuds with Andre the Giant, The Undertaker, and Hulk Hogan. And for a funny moment that I remember when he lost by count out to Doink the Clown, because Doink the Clown presented him with a gift wrap box. And Kamala ended up being counted out because he was outside the ring trying to open his gift box. And then when he opened it, there was nothing inside. And then Kamala started crying. It's worth Googling just to see that. We also had an immortal moment. The inductee was inducted by CM Punk, and the recipients were none other than Bret Hart and Bret the Hitman Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin for their match from WrestleMania 13. I believe that was the first time a match.
Yes, it is. It is.
And I believe that also made Bret Hart the first 3-time inductee in the Hall of Fame. Unless there is somebody else.
Sure, Ric Flair's a 3-time.
How was Ric Flair 3-time? He was with the Four Horsemen. Ric Flair on
Four
his own.
Horsemen. Himself on his own. Never mind. I thought Evolution had been inducted, but they haven't.
Let me have a look. But yeah, so I mean, that was a good moment to see Bret Hart and Steve Austin in WWE again after such a long time. We then had Michelle McCool, finally, I would say, deservedly inducted.
Yeah, absolutely.
By none other than her husband. If you don't know who her husband is, well,
you've been living under a rock.
Exactly. It's not The Rock, by the way.
No, that wasn't a clue.
We then had the Natural Disasters inducted: Earthquake and Typhoon, the late John Tenter, who was Earthquake, and Fred Ottman as Typhoon. Fred Ottman, otherwise also known as Tugboat, as well, for those who may not be aware. I believe he had another name in WCW, but I can't remember. Then one that I would say was really overdue, but had been overlooked for many, many, many years due to maybe certain controversies. Somebody who, by all accounts, was considered to be a natural successor to, or at least in WWE's eyes, was going to be a natural successor to Hulk Hogan, but for whatever reason, it just didn't turn out that way. He was a 2-time WCW champion, albeit both reigns were very short-lived. Like, for example, when he won his second WCW title in an episode of Monday Nitro, when he beat Hulk Hogan, he then lost the title 6 days later to Hulk Hogan at pay-per-view. Obviously, in a legit way, nothing untoward happened there. Creative control card. But I am, of course, talking about
Lex Luger.
I have. I am, of course, talking about Lex Luger.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not going to go in depth about his controversies. At the end of the day, the way I see it, history has judged him, and obviously the industry has judged him, and they've seen, it's not for us to judge in that respect. He had a Hall of Fame worthy career, a Royal Rumble winner, 2-time WCW World Champion. He was the longest reigning WCW United States champion. And, he's had his health issues, and under the guidance and friendship of Diamond Dallas Page, he's actually started, walking again. And, it was a very nice touch to have the then current champion, Cody Rhodes, he still is the current champion, personally visit Lex Luger and tell him of his induction. A long overdue induction.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was the headline inductee, and person I don't really need to say an awful lot about, Triple H. Just for the record, I think some of his behavior outside of the ring recently and some of his decisions behind the scenes are a little bit questionable at the best of times. But there's no denying that, whether it was with the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression Era, he was a main player. I would never say he was the headliner of the Attitude Era. He did headline a number of events, of course, and had some memorable feuds. But of course, when we think of the Attitude Era, we think of The Rock and Steve Austin. When we think of the Ruthless Aggression Era, we think of, CM Punk, we think of John Cena, but Triple H has been a mainstay of all of that. And, his record speaks for itself. And, there are a lot of rumors flying around that maybe this year, Triple H might be moving on from the wrestling industry. I mean, it's not for me to speculate or comment, but there is no doubting that he is a legend of the business. And, a deserved headline inductee.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have anything to add on any of those inductees, any memories or
I mean,
any opinions?
I think you've said everything that needs to be said. I think what you said has been very good, and I don't think I need to add much more. I mean, there isn't much more to add. I mean, I I think I agree with what you said about Lex Luger. I think it was well over why can't I think of the word over what?
Overdue.
Yeah, overdue. Why did I forget that word? Overdue. It was well overdue. He definitely did. He definitely had a Hall of Fame career, and it was good to see him finally inducted. Of course, he's had his controversies outside of the ring, which we won't get into. Um, we might do a what's the news where we talk about wrestling controversies. That actually might be a really good episode. So we might talk about it in that episode. But
Well, I mean, in the past we have picked out wrestlers that we've discussed in an episode, so maybe we'll save Lex Luger for another time.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, absolutely deserves to be inducted. Of course, the headline, of course, absolutely deserves to be inducted. Whether you agree with some of his booking or how good of a booker he is, this isn't about his booking. This is about his wrestling career, and without a doubt, it is a Hall of Fame wrestling career. Unfortunately, not cut majorly short, but still cut short because of his heart issues, and unfortunately, he didn't get to have a proper retirement match, which I'm sure eats away at him. But he had many a memorable match. He main evented WrestleManias. He had many memorable rivalries. One that sticks in my mind the most is the whole Randy Orton versus the entire McMahon family. And the one moment that sticks out to me the most there is where the whole McMahon family returned and Triple H then was in tow as well. And what a moment that was. You know, what what an amazing rivalry it was. Randy Orton was in his prime as a heel. That was when he was at his very best as a heel, in my opinion. I think it was 2009. So there's not much more I need to say. Michelle McCool, well overdue as well. She deserves to be inducted. A lot of people give her a shit, saying she's only been inducted because she's Undertaker's wife. No, she has had a very memorable career. She was already very, very well established in WWE before she even got with the Undertaker. So it's nothing to do with the Undertaker. You know what I mean? And even if it was, she still deserves it, does she not? She's had a very, very Hall of Fame worthy career. I mean, her and Layla as Lay Cool itself was Hall of Fame worthy. The stuff that them two did and the memorable rivalries they had, and I expect Layla to be inducted as well at some point soon. I just think it's amazing, and actually, I would advocate for Lay Cool to be inducted as a tag team, absolutely. But both women deserve to be inducted as solos as well. But yeah, not much else I really need to say about them inductees. Is there anything you want to say about WrestleMania? Because you didn't get to talk about that.
No, I mean, I think you touched on all the right notes. I was personally, as an Io Sky fan, I was personally happy to see her get a winning moment at WrestleMania. I think Jey Uso and Gunther's match was memorable. I think the main event of night one was memorable as well for the Heyman betraying both Roman Reigns and CM Punk. I think it wasn't a great match, but obviously, the fact that he got title number 17 is an iconic moment, a memorable moment. And, WWE loved it so much in Las Vegas that they decided to strip, was it New Orleans or Minneapolis, of WrestleMania 42 and
Yeah,
take it back to Las Vegas again, which the most obviously they're in it for the money, of course, but it's the most bizarre thing I've ever seen or heard
Yeah.
in wrestling. How you just say to a city, you know, we know we agreed to you to host such and such an event, but we're just stripping you of it and going back to Las Vegas because we just want money.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I think that is going to be the way forward.
It's ridiculous, but there you go. That is
Mm.
where we are. It
Yeah.
shows that it's not about. Well, I mean, we could be here all day talking
Yeah.
about that, but yeah. Other than that, not a spectacular WrestleMania. I think of the recent WrestleManias that I have seen, I think WrestleMania 40 was probably the one that stood out for a whole host of reasons. But yeah, I think 41 and 42 have been a bit, no, not quite the dizzying heights, but I mean, sorry, 41 wasn't quite the dizzying heights. We'll see what 42 transpires. And then obviously we've got 43. We're all going to Saudi Arabia, so we shall see. But yeah, that was April for me. Back to you.
Thank you. So we now move on to May. Now May was when, of course, oh no, hang on, no, hang on a minute. I'm getting confused here. Okay. Okay, yeah, all right. So okay, that's what confused me. Right, sorry. I got very confused because there was two, well, not two PLEs in May, but there was one PLE and then one, like, I don't even know what you would class it as, but it's basically Saturday Night's main event. But it's not they don't class it as a PLE. But it was still obviously a big show. So of course in May, so you had Backlash at May 10th, so that was before Saturday Night's main event. And let me just have a look because there's only one match that really stands out to me, but I don't want to miss anything else. Oh, okay. So it wasn't really a massively memorable PLE in terms of the matches. There was only one match that really stood out, but there's one other match that I do want to talk about, and it was a bizarre match. It was one that sort of came around because of Gunter's loss at WrestleMania, and he started picking on Michael Cole. And of course, Pat McAfee, who was Michael Cole's commentary partner at the time, and he was obviously in more of a fit state to fight back, was, said, no one picks on, my friend. I want a match with you, Gunner. And that's what happened at Backlash in 2025. Pat McAfee versus Gunter did happen, and it wasn't exactly a memorable match. Gunter, as most of us predicted, did dominate the match, but it was just weird how it came about. I never thought I would see that match in my life, Pat McAfee versus Gunter, but it did happen. Like I said, not really memorable match. But yeah, definitely a weird one. But of course, the main match that that was the most memorable match of that card was, of course, the final ever match between Randy Orton and John Cena for, of course, the undisputed WWE Championship. John Cena's first defense after winning the title at WrestleMania. And what a match it was. They both put on an amazing match. It was good to see them fight one last time. John Cena, to no surprise, of course, retained, but it was a great match, and I'm glad that we got to see them face each other one last time. I mean, you couldn't have had every time John Cena's happened tour and not had a Randy Orton match at some point. It just couldn't have happened. So yeah, it was good, and I really enjoyed that. And then, of course, you had Saturday night's main event, where there wasn't really a lot that happened on that show. It was a decent night, but of course, the whole sort of show is only memorable for one moment, and that moment is the return of R-Truth / Ron Killings. Oh no, hang on, is it? Hang on a minute, sorry, I keep getting confused. No, main event, May 2025. No, not May 2024, May 2025. Okay. Okay, so let's skip through these. Okay. So May 24th. Yeah, that's what we want. Okay. Yeah, May 24th. So okay, so you had that match. So I will be with you in a second. Okay. No, sorry. Completely ignore what I just said. So the match that happened at Saturday Night Main Event was it was a match that I knew was going to happen on this retirement tour, because John Cena is very good friends with this guy in real life. I knew he'd want to face him one last time. Of course, I'm talking about R-Truth. But it was actually Ron Cena that turned up. Of course, and what I mean by that is that R-Truth was dressed fully in John Cena gear, and called himself Ron Cena, as typical, in typical R-Truth style, joking around. And then he faced John Cena, and then we thought that was the final match that R-Truth was ever going to have in WWE, because of what happened shortly after. Shortly after the match, which was a very good match, in all fairness, because R-Truth can put on really good matches. He's not just a joke character. He can go in that ring, even at his age. He can still go better than some people that are very much younger than him. How he's aging is amazing, but that's a different subject altogether. He after he had his match with John Cena, the very next night, on the very next day, he released a statement on Twitter saying that he had been released. And what happened after is something I've never seen before. The absolute uproar from the WWE Universe that R-Truth had been released like a piece of dirt after 20 odd years of service in the WWE. The only man left active in WWE on a pretty full-time basis that had been going since the Attitude Era in WWE. He had a spell where he left only very briefly to go to TNA, but did come back not long after. And he was in WWE for all that time, apart from that brief spell, and they chucked him aside and released him when he should never, ever be released. He should always have his job, because he's very good at it, and he won't be around for much longer. So he's one of them that is just part of the furniture. He's one of them who you just shouldn't ever get rid of, and they did. And the uproar that it caused, everyone, the live crowds with the shows after that was found out, chanting, "We want truth, we want truth, we want truth," very loudly for loads of shows after. And then
You still there?
Yeah, me. Um, yeah, there was a hashtag going around on Twitter as well. We want truth hashtag. Um, I don't know. Sorry, very unorganized again. I should have had these. I should have searched all these before. Um, okay, yeah. So we'll talk about the rest of what happened with R-Truth when we get to June. But before we go to June, I'll pass you over to my co-host and let's see what he has to say about May.
Yeah, pretty much the same. Nothing more to add. I think commenting on the circumstances with R-Truth was quite extraordinary when you think how much backlash there was, not just from the fans, but current and former WWE
Oh
employees
yeah.
across the entire industry. I don't think it was a case of. Had it been a case of his career had just come to a natural end or whatever, then yeah. I think it was the circumstances and the way that he was just kind of dismissed. And for me, that was kind of the first time we saw a bit of a disconnect between, the higher ups in TKO and basically the WWE universe, as it were. Because it's clear that for whatever reason, they just viewed him as somebody that wasn't part of their future plans, or they thought he was dispensable, and they learned otherwise. But I get the feeling that this probably won't be the last time something like this happens, and you know, he doesn't have long left in his career anyway. We'll we'll see how it goes, but I'm glad that they gave him a contract back.
Of course. He's one of them superstars that he's just so beloved by everyone, like not just the fans backstage as well, which is why there was such a very public sort of disgust on Twitter, like current superstars who were currently under contract with WWE actively putting their disgust on Twitter that R-Truth had been released. Like, so many people angry. Current WWE superstars under contract giving no shit that they're under contract still with the company and showing their disgust. Like, literally, they didn't care. Usually, you wouldn't see stuff like that because of like, well, I can't really post this because I'm still under contract. I could get in trouble. Nobody cared. Nobody cared about getting in trouble, and that's how much R-Truth meant, and still means to a lot of people backstage, but not just backstage, but the fans as well. Um, but yeah, and sticking to the R-Truth theme, we come to June. Money in the Bank in June happened, and Cena faced. We had a Money in the Bank PLE where we had two Money in the Bank matches where we saw who we saw in the women's match. The last person I thought was going to win that match, Naomi, winning the Money in the Bank briefcase, which I never expected to happen. I never expected it to happen. I thought even though she turned heel, I thought she was still going to be treated the same as she's always been treated. She's never really been seen as one of the big main stars. I mean, yeah, she's a multiple time SmackDown Women's Champion, now a one-time Women's World Champion, but I just never thought that she was going to win it. I thought the people in that match were bigger stars than her, and I just thought they're not going to choose Naomi over all these bigger stars, but they did. She won the match, and of course, as we will talk about a bit later on down the line, her reign didn't last long. But anyway, we'll get to that a bit later because that comes a bit later. Of course, then the men's Money in the Bank match, Seth Rollins becomes 2-time Money in the Bank winner by winning the Money in the Bank match. Again, in my opinion, that was very predictable. I knew that it was going to happen because of the way that Seth's story was going. I just didn't think anybody else in that match really had much of a story going on, or would have much of a story with the briefcase apart from Seth. So I had a feeling that Seth was going to win, so we had that. And then, of course, John Cena faced John Cena and Logan Paul faced Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes. And Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso won, but only because of the return of one man. The return of a man who had only just been released, a man who we've just talked about. Yes, you are hearing me right. R-Truth, or as he was known when he came back, Ron Killings. He came back as this serious character, which unfortunately didn't last long, but he did come back, and he got such a big cheer when he came back because nobody thought he was coming back. As much as the backlash that the WWE received for him being released, we didn't think that TKO were going to care, and we didn't think they were going to bring him back. So we did not expect this at all. And all of a sudden, this figure appears in the match, to stop Cena, whatever Cena was going to do to stop him. And he attacks Cena, unmasked himself. It was R-Truth. And then Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso went on to win the match. But what a moment. What a moment. Probably one of the biggest moments in R-Truth's, well, at least in recent history, in R-Truth's career. He's not had many big moments, in the last sort of 10 years because he's been used as a joke character, which is fine. He's perfect for that character, perfect for that sort of character, and it's what's made him beloved. So it's absolutely fine. But yeah, a big moment for R-Truth definitely, and like I say, it was a very big moment, and not one that I expected, not one that not one that many other people really expected. But it was good to see that WWE completely reversed on their decision of releasing R-Truth and brought him back. I'm glad they did. To release somebody who's been with the business that long, to me, is disrespectful. I mean, they did the same to Mike Yoda, the ref. They released him after he refed for the company for 20 odd years, and I think it's just really disrespectful. I'm not saying that you should never be able to let people go when they've been working for the company for that long. I just think, they've been working for that long. Just let them work until they retire because they're not that long off it. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, that was Money in the Bank, and it was good. The Money in the Bank matches were good, even though the men's one was very predictable. They still were good. The matches, which they always usually are, because it's a lot of high flying, a lot of weapons being used, and they're just good matches. The John Cena Logan Paul match was a good match. It made even better by the return of R-Truth, of course. But yeah, and of course, in June as well, and it happened. It was actually on just before Money in the Bank. It was the first ever AAA PLE since being bought by WWE, which is a hugely significant moment. Of course, it's the first AAA PLE that I've ever watched. And I made a point of watching it because obviously it was the first one on the WWE. I wanted to see how it goes, how it was going to go, and it was good. It was very good. And I think this will do the world of good for AAA being under WWE's wing now. I really do. It'll get them more attention. They'll become more popular, and it will just do them the world of good. But yeah, very significant moment. Let me just have a quick look at the matches that happened. So you had Octagon Junior, Aerostar, Mr. Iguana. They defeated Latino World Order. Stephanie Vaquer and Lola Vice defeated Chick Tormenta and Dallas. Legado del Fantasma, which is Santos Escobar, Angel Umberto, defeated El Hijo de Doctor, Wagner Jr., and Pagano, and Psycho Clown. Ethan Page defeated Javon Evans, Laredo Kid, and Ray Phoenix. And then in the main event, El Hijo del Vikingo, who was the AAA Mega Champion, defeated Chad Gable by pinfall. So it was pretty good. It was especially that Chad Gable Vikingo match or Vikingo. That was a very good match from what I remember. But yeah, that was pretty much June in a nutshell for wrestling. Very big June in terms of the whole big R-Truth return, and then the first AAA PLE under after being bought by WWE. But yeah, very significant June for wrestling, and that's really all I have to say. I'll pass you over to my co-host.
No, not much to add there. I mean, it was good to see the return of R-Truth, Ron Killings. You know, I was about to quote somebody from the past, but again, knowing that he was a bit of a controversial individual, I'm not going to quote his famous quote, but let's just say, this is what you definitely call people power.
Yeah.
But other than that, as this is going to be a common theme throughout the year, it wasn't really for me a vintage year of wrestling, and it was just marked by a significant milestone, albeit not for the right exactly happening in the right circumstances, and obviously two big retirements, as it were. But we'll come on to that shortly.
Anything to say about the AAA PLE, the first one, and since being bought by WWE?
I tuned into it. It was a good moment. It's good to see, Mexican luchador wrestling back at the forefront again. Good to see lots of crossover as well. It's good for the industry. It makes it exciting. It offers more choice. I can't say I'm a huge fan of it, but it's good. It's good to see.
Okay. So we move on to July. We had of course we had let me just have a quick sorry, I will be with you shortly. Oh, of course. Well, actually, sorry, there is one event that I didn't talk about in June, and I do apologise. Of course, in June, at the very end of June, so there was two WEPLEs in June, and then obviously the AAA PLE. At the very end of June, you had, of course, Night of Champions, which happened in Saudi Arabia. For you know, you had the King of the Ring finals, which was with the women. It was Jade Cargill versus Asuka, and Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton. Much to the disappointment of my co-host and myself, Jade Cargill did defeat Asuka. We were both hoping that Asuka would win. And then oops, I didn't mean to do that. And then of course, you had Cody Rhodes, who defeated Randy Orton to become King of the Ring. A big moment as well. And then of course, John Cena for the very final time facing one of his biggest rivals and my favourite rival of John Cena's. Of course, I'm talking about the person who's actually now a very good friend of John Cena, one of the only people that actually CM Punk really sees as a friend in wrestling, John Cena. Versus CM Punk at Night of Champions. What a match it was! It was a great match. Of course, Cena again, through no surprise, did retain, but it was a good match and it was good to see. But of course, before that match, just before that match, we had the very memorable promo where CM Punk came out dressed as the Doctor of Thugonomics, Punk Life as he called it. Very very funny segment, and that was on the SmackDown, the SmackDown that was in Saudi Arabia just before not Money in the Bank, Night of Champions, and yeah, it was a good match, very very good match, and not a bad PLE really if you think about the matches that we had. But yeah, that I nearly forgot to mention that in June. Anything you want to add for
No,
Night of
no,
Champions?
no. I think you've hit the nail on the head.
Okay. Um, so that was Night of Champions. Um, sorry. So then, of course, after that, we had in July we had another Saturday night's main event, which was on um, the 12th of July, the night before the All Women's PLE in July of 2025, which was Evolution, which we'll get to in a minute. But let's have a look at Saturday night's main event. Let's see if anything of note happened on that. Of course, something of note happened on that night in July on
It did.
Saturday night's main event. We
It did.
had the first retirement of two people in the year of 2025. Not exactly an amazing retirement match for this person, and I don't think he was happy. And of course, very memorably, his speech was cut off at the very end, which again he wasn't very happy about. But of course, I'm talking about the final match, the retirement match of Goldberg. He
The man.
faced he faced Gunter in the main event for the World Heavyweight Championship, and he won. Gunter won by literally making Goldberg pass out. It was not the best way to go out for Goldberg. Wasn't the best match, and also he was then cut off when he was doing his speech, which I think was incredibly disrespectful. But it happened, and that was the retirement of Goldberg, unless he decides to come out of retirement because he wants a better ending, which it wouldn't surprise me, to be honest. Um, but yeah, that was for now as we know it the first retirement of two people in 2025, and a very significant retirement, of course, as well, because he is a WCW legend. One of the greats. My co-host, I know, is a big fan of Goldberg, so I will pass it over to him now.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Goldberg is a legend. I won't spend this stream talking about my appreciation of Goldberg or anything like that. We could say that for another time, but I think I sympathise with him in terms of the way the match transpired, particularly the ending. Whether or not it was a deliberate cut-off, I don't think it was. Obviously, he maybe feels some beef and resentment to WWE because of that. I don't think it was deliberate, but at the same time, WWE knew this was a retirement match. There was going to be a speech at the end. They should have factored in whether or not they were going to overrun. But yeah, personally, I would have thought a better way to have done it would have been to have allowed Goldberg the win, perhaps having Seth Rollins interfere to try and cash in or something, thinking that cashing in on Goldberg would be better. But yeah. But yeah, I mean, if that was to be his final moment, at least he got his retirement match on a main event. No less a world title match. Yeah, a legend of the business. You know, you can't talk about the history of WCW and the Monday Night Wars and not mention Goldberg. You know, the only blemish on his career, I would say, was he never got his hands on the WWE title per se. You know, the like, lineal championship of the WWE, which was kind of common for a lot of the WCW expats in WWE. But you know, a legendary career.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, okay, so then that was the retirement of Goldberg, and then of course very next night we had the All Women's PLE Evolution, the second Evolution 2, because we obviously had an Evolution before, but it's a fair few years ago, and a lot of WWE fans are saying it's the PLE of the year, that it was the best PLE of the year, and that says something, that it's an All Women's PLE, and it's a lot of WWE fans are saying it's the PLE of the year. That says a lot to me, and that says to me that it shouldn't be there shouldn't be as big of a gap between this sort of evolution and the next one as there was between the first one and the second one. That's what it says to me. But anyway, um, a lot of good matches on that card. Um, you know, two stick out to me. Well, three actually. Tiffany Stratton versus the legend Trish Stratus for the WWE Women's Championship. You know, good to see. It's always good to see Trish come back. You know, one of the greats. You know, in my opinion, you know, top five easily, greatest women to ever be in WWE. I don't know how my co-host feels about that, but you know, I would definitely put her in the top five. Um, in terms of, and it was a good match. You know, she can still go. It was a good match, and it was good to see Trish back. And the yeah, and then another match that sticks out to me was the 20-woman battle royal. The winner gets a women's world championship match at Clash in Paris. Of course, this was when the Stephanie Vaquer main roster push started. Pretty much started straight away as soon as she came to the main roster, and she won that match and got a match at Clash in Paris, which I'm sure, I'm not sure, but we will definitely be talking about a little bit later on. But then the night was not over because um, Io Sky and Rhea Ripley were facing each other for the Women's World Championship. Io Sky, the champion, facing Rhea Ripley. It was a great match. Rhea Ripley has never beaten Io Sky before, so it was a big match for Rhea Ripley because there's not many people Rhea Ripley hasn't beaten. And Naomi entered herself into that match by cashing in the championship near the end, the Money in the Bank briefcase near the end of the match, and becoming the women's world champion. Only for a brief time though, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. But that was the Evolution pay per view, the all women's PLE. Like I said, a lot of people saying it's one of the PLEs of the year of 2025, which says everything you need to know about how good the women are. And that to me means that it won't be that long until we see another Evolution PLE. But that's July. Of course, we had the Goldberg retirement, and then we had the Evolution PLE. Anything you want to say about the Evolution PLE?
No, again, it was a good PLE. The EO Rhea match stood out for me, obviously until Naomi cashed in. But yeah, I agree with you. I hope it's not going to be a while before we see another Evolution PLE.
Yes, and then of course we come to August, which of course is a very big month in the calendar of WWE. And also it was a significant moment as well because not only is August the month where SummerSlam happens, which is why it's a big month, but it was also the very first 2 night SummerSlam. Um, and let's have a look at the significant matches. So of course, night one, we had Roman Reigns. He was with Jey Uso and he faced Bron Breakker and Bronson Reed. And Roman Reigns and Jey Uso won, and it was a good match. It was a very good match. I enjoyed it. Other matches that were significant, of course, Tiffany Stratton versus Jade Cargill. A lot of people um, pretty much said that this was the end of Tiffany's reign, that Jade was going to get the win, and this was going to mark the start of Jade's reign. Didn't happen. Tiffany yet again somehow pulled out the victory in what was, an incredible reign for Tiffany Stratton. Of course, you had usually you have, a celebrity or something like that have a match in a big PLE like SummerSlam, and of course, it was Jelly Roll's turn to have a match, and it was Drew McIntyre, Logan Paul versus Randy Orton and Jelly Roll. Decent match. Jelly Roll was actually pretty decent. I wasn't expecting him to be as good, but he did train so hard because he didn't want to disappoint anyone and he didn't want to put on a bad match, and he actually put on a very decent match. Of course, then in the main event of SummerSlam Night 1, you had CM Punk versus Gunter for the World Heavyweight Championship, where CM Punk finally got back to the top of the mountain since returning to WWE. He was finally a champion again, only for Seth Rollins to do another heist of the century like he did when he cashed in his Money in the Bank before at WrestleMania 31.
I was there, I remember it.
Yeah. He cashed in the Money in the Bank briefcase. He came out on crutches, looked like he was injured still because there was a rumor going around that we saw him in a match injure his knee. Turns out his knee wasn't really injured. It was just all a heist to trick CM Punk. He come out, he cashed in on CM Punk and broke a lot of CM Punk's fans' hearts and took the championship off CM Punk. So that was the end of night one. A very, very decent night of wrestling for night one of SummerSlam. Some good matches, and then we get to night two. It kicked off the night with Naomi with her first championship defense and her only championship defense, and I will get to that in a bit. Defeating Io Sky and Rhea Ripley to retain her Women's World Championship. There was then an amazing six-way TLC match for the WWE Tag Team Championships, which the Wyatt Six, Dexter Lumis and Joe Gacy, won. They retained their titles. And then, of course, the match where John Cena was a face again. He faced Cody Rhodes in the for the undisputed. He faced Cody Rhodes in an undisputed WWE Championship street fight match. Well, it wasn't a match; it was a fight. Cody Rhodes defeated John Cena to get the undisputed WWE Championship back, and it was at a very emotional moment after the match where John Cena hugged Cody Rhodes, was saying something in his ear. Cody Rhodes was very emotional, of course, knowing that was the last time he was going to face Cena, who he has said many times is one of his heroes. Of course, it's going to be an emotional moment, and obviously Cena's very final SummerSlam as well. But it was a good weekend, and it was a good SummerSlam. Very decent, and there were some great matches on the card. But yeah.
Am I right in saying something happened at the end of that match?
Oh, of course, as well. I don't really want to talk about it, but of course I have to, with it being the year of wrestling. Of course, the return of somebody that I never wanted to see in WWE again, to be honest, and what made me stop watching WWE for like a month, maybe 2 months after this happened. It was, of course, the return of Brock Lesnar. The less said about him, the better. But of course, it was the first time in like 2 years, through nobody else's fault but his own, that he hadn't been in WWE. And yeah, that's all I'm really going to say on that. It was a big moment. It got a big pop. Wasn't happy about it. My co-host feels the same way. But yeah, that for me is, from what I can see, the only really big moment of July. I can't see any other shows or anything like that happened. There might be something that happened in another company that I don't know of, but I'm sure you will. So you can talk about that. What's going on here? Why is that doing that? Okay. Let me just double check. Yeah, nothing else happened in August. There was an NXT PLE, but we don't really take much notice of NXT, so we won't talk about that. But yeah, I'll pass over to you so you can talk about SummerSlam.
Yeah, again, it was. It felt like a bit of a passing of the torch moment. Seeing the end of John Cena's title reign, and him shaking hands with Cody and everything. Not overly happy about the return of Brock Lesnar, but it is what it is, and it's clear that for whatever reason, WWE see him as part of their plans for this year's WrestleMania, I should say, and indeed, it looks as though he is set to retire as well this year. So we shall, we'll see what transpires. But other than that, yeah, it was. I would say it was a good 2-night SummerSlam. Obviously, it looks as though this is now the way forward for the major PLEs. 2-night SummerSlam, a 2-night WrestleMania, 2-night Royal Rumble. Is there anything else that's 2-night?
No.
No. So, yeah, I think that's going to be the way forward now for WWE for a lot of their big pay-per-views. Possibly even for War Games, Survivor Series War Games.
Maybe.
The women's War Games match on night 1 and then night 2 the men's, or the other way around, maybe a 2-night Money in the Bank.
Yeah.
If it's making the money.
Yeah. So the only other moment that happened in August that I've touched upon a few times, well, at least I've alluded to, I said back when Naomi won the Money in the Bank briefcase that her reign as Women's World Champion would be very brief. I then said, just then when I was talking about SummerSlam, that Naomi, even though she won, it would be her only defense in that reign. And you might be asking why. The only reason you'd be asking why is if you've been living under a rock. Because if you're a wrestling fan, you will know why. No, it's not because of injury. It's because of something quite fantastic. She announced on the August 18th episode of Monday Night Raw that she was expecting a baby boy, and she laid her championship down in the ring. She said she would be black, and the women would have to proceed with caution. That was her whole gimmick. But of course, her being a heel aside, of course, us as WWE fans, of course, we're very thrilled for Naomi. It's always nice when we get good news like this in the wrestling world, and we wish, obviously, Naomi the best with her pregnancy, and we hope it's going well. But yeah, that was another significant moment in wrestling in August. And yeah, of course, like I say, we wish Naomi the best, and we hope that her pregnancy is going well. And we look forward to seeing her back in WWE, hopefully this year at some point. Anything you want to say about that?
No, I mean, obviously, hope it all goes well for Naomi.
And Jimmy, of course.
And Jimmy Uso, of course, another member of the Usos, the Bloodline. I'm just trying to think what else happened. No, I think that's all I have to say, really. Mine's gone blank a little bit there, but yeah.
Okay. Well, that was it for August, from what I can see. Just give me a second. Let me get back to my PLE page. Yep, here we go. So then our next PLE after our next WEPLE, sorry, after SummerSlam was Clash in Paris, which, in case you don't know where Paris is, it's in France. Although I'm sorry, but if you do not know where Paris is, then I don't even know what to say. But anyway, we had some decent matches on this PLE.
I'm trying to see if there's any other places called Paris.
So we had to open the night. We had Roman Reigns versus Bronson Reed, the Tribal Chief versus the Tribal Thief, and Roman Reigns won, which I'm not surprised. Roman Reigns win. It was a good match. Good to see the Tribal Thief put in his place by the Tribal Chief. If you're confused why I'm calling Bronson Reed the Tribal Thief, that's what he called himself when he kept nicking Roman Reigns' trainers, or sneakers, as they call them in America. We had, of course, the Nikki Bella facing Becky Lynch for the WWE Women's Intercontinental Championship. Becky Lynch, of course, retaining. We had Rusev versus Sheamus in a good old-fashioned Donnybrook match, which Rusev did win. And then we had John Cena, of course, who was having a match in every single PLE. He faced Logan Paul. A lot of people weren't happy that Logan Paul was taking up one of John Cena's matches, but John Cena wanted to face him, so he faced him. John Cena did win, and it was a decent match. You know, whether you like Logan or you hate him, you cannot deny that he has got an ability in the ring, and he is very good. And then in the main event, it was a fatal four-way for the World Heavyweight Championship. Seth Rollins, then the recently crowned champion, facing CM Punk, Jey Uso, and LA Knight in a fatal four-way, and of course Seth Rollins did retain, and that is Clash in Paris. Very good PLE, very good matches on that PLE. Yeah, not much else to really say about it. Very good.
Just to point out, there are actually a number of places named Paris worldwide. In Canada and Indonesia, and in the United States, there's about 27 towns or communities or villages named Paris.
Yeah.
So, but of course, when we talk about Paris, we mean the Paris, the capital of France. If you don't know where that is, then I think you're an idiot. But you're an idiot.
Yeah, anything you want to say about Clash in Paris?
No, again, it was a good event. John Cena's final time in Paris. I think it's worth also pointing out that, I mean, obviously, I assume you probably feel the same way, but I was disappointed that the UK didn't get a PLE this year in 2025. Sorry?
The closest we got was Clash in Paris.
It was. I mean, look, ultimately we did get a couple of episodes of Raw and SmackDown, in London, Glasgow, and Birmingham, but nevertheless, we
Sorry.
Sorry?
I just went, Birmingham.
Birmingham. But, nevertheless, we didn't get a PLE, which was extremely disappointing, given that the last couple of years we've been getting one. And the fact that we didn't have a PLE in the UK for John Cena's retirement tour was, in my opinion, extremely disappointing. And obviously we'll preview 2026 in a moment, but so far that obviously the year's only started, but so far there hasn't been an announcement of whether or not there's going to be a UK PLE. So we shall see.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was also August, actually. That was August 31st. Which I didn't even realise until just now. So that's August. That was August, a very busy August, obviously, SummerSlam, and then Clash in Paris at the very end. Of course, the other moment that I didn't mention that was very notable. Oh no, never mind. Ignore me. It didn't happen at Clash in Paris. Ignore me. So then there was another AAA PLE, which was good. I don't know if I watched that one. I haven't watched them all, but I'm not really going to touch on many more AAA PLEs that happened. I just wanted to mention the very first one because it's a significant one under WWE. Since being bought by WWE, but I won't really mention any of the others because I don't think I've watched any of the others. I'll be quite honest. But then we had WrestlePalooza. Now, I didn't
No.
watch. So I touched on Brock Lesnar's return at the end of SummerSlam, and I was disgusted with WWE, and it made me stop watching. I didn't watch Clash in Paris. I looked at the results, but I didn't actually watch it.
I mean, there was a significant return as well at WrestlePalooza.
Yeah, well, we'll get onto that in a second. But yeah, I was extremely disappointed with WWE that they brought him back. So I just decided just to take a break from WWE for a bit. And then I was drew back in because of a certain someone who returned in September. Somebody that I was a massive fan of when they were in WWE before. The fact that they are married to somebody else who is my favourite superstar currently and one of mine of all time. Um, it just fit perfectly. I'm of course talking about the return of the one and only AJ Lee. In my opinion, one of the greatest women's wrestlers to ever grace a wrestling ring. Very very good, and she of course had her return match at WrestlePalooza, which we're going to talk about now, which happened in September. So we're talking about September in WWE now. Of course, to kick off the night, we had the squash match. That was Brock Lesnar versus John Cena. John Cena apparently asked for this, asked to be squashed. So that's up to Cena if that's what he wanted. But yeah, we had the Vision, Bron Breakker, Bronson Reed defeating the Usos, special referee being LA Knight. We then had, of course, the vacant Women's World Championship. Stephanie Vaquer versus Io Sky, and Stephanie Vaquer winning. And very significant moment for Stephanie Vaquer. She hadn't long been on the main roster, and she was already a women's world champion. Completely deserved, though. She is one of the best women to come into the company in a long time, and may her reign last. She's very, very good in the ring. She has entertaining matches, and you know, the Devil's Kiss is a personal highlight of mine. Where she, if you don't know what that move is, she basically puts the opponent's head face first to the mat in between her legs, and then basically moves her ass up and down and basically smashes their face into the canvas. It's very obvious why I like that move.
Say that. I was about to say that. It's very obvious.
It's very obvious why me and my co-host like that move. I mean, her ass just jiggles as she goes up and down. It's a very obvious why we like that move.
I'd want Piper Niven or Nia Jax to do that to me.
Jesus Christ. Moving swiftly along. But yeah, big moment for Stephanie. Winning the Women's World Championship. It was a very good match between Stephanie and Io. They had so much chemistry, and they're both just amazing. So it was going to be a good match, and it was. Of course, then we had the returning AJ Lee in a match with her husband. What a match that was for me to see my two favorites in the ring together again. CM Punk being one of my favorite. On the men's side, if not my favorite, and AJ Lee, without a shadow of a doubt, by far being my favorite women's wrestler of all time. So it was amazing to see them tagging together, and the fact that they're married just makes it all the better for me. And they faced, of course, Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch, and they did win. AJ Lee tapping Becky out, although Becky said she didn't tap out, she was asking for help, although she wasn't, she was tapping out. And then, of course, the Undisputed WWE Championship was defended in the main event. It was Cody Rhodes versus Drew McIntyre. Cody Rhodes defeating Drew McIntyre, and that being the very first match of them two in this very long rivalry that they've had, which does culminate this coming Friday in a 3 Stages of Hell match. But yeah, a very, very solid PLE, in my opinion. Obviously, it was one of the highlights of my year because of AJ Lee returning to the ring. Wasn't bothered about Brock Lesnar being on the card, but it's the reason that I was drew back to WWE was because of AJ Lee and her return, nothing else. So yeah, it was a very decent PLE, and good to see AJ Lee back in the ring. I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, it was good to see AJ return after a very, very, very long time. Hopefully, they'll be using her more. Brock Lesnar getting a squash win over Cena. And Stephanie Vaquer, who I would say has easily been the breakout star of the year and probably the top female star of the year, dare I say it. She has been her, and Julia as well, another of my favorites. Her ascendancy from NXT to the WWE main roster and indeed into the title scene has been extraordinary. And she looks as though she's going to be one of the major, female headliners for the next few years. And, may well be a shout for main eventing WrestleMania.
Absolutely.
We move on.
Yeah. Okay, so that was WrestlePalooza, and that was September, I believe. I don't think there's anything else there. There is an NXT PLE. There was a couple actually, but we're not going to really talk about them because no disrespect to NXT, we just don't watch NXT, so we can't really talk about something we don't watch. So then next we move on to okay, there was another NXT PLE, but again we don't watch NXT. The next PLE was WWE Crown Jewel in Perth, Australia, and what a PLE that was. In my opinion, the best match of John Cena's retirement tour happened at Crown Jewel, and we'll get to that in just a second. We had an Australian street fight between Bronson Reed, who of course is Australian. He faced Roman Reigns and defeated Roman Reigns. We had a champion versus champion match between Stephanie Baker and Tiffany Stratton for the Women's Crown Jewel Championship. Of course, Tiffany Stratton hadn't lost at all in 2025. So, and Stephanie Baker, I think, had only lost once. So it was a very big match. One of these women was one of them was either going to lose for the first time in 2025, or one of them was going to lose for the second time in 2025. I predicted Stephanie was going to win that match because she just won the Women's World Championship. She wasn't going to lose just after winning the championship. It would completely ruin her momentum, but it wouldn't do anything to Tiffany because she'd had such a long reign. It wasn't really going to do anything to Tiffany. So I had a feeling Stephanie was going to win the match, and I was indeed correct. We, of course, had the Kabuki Warriors back for the first time in a match, for the first time in a long time. Asuka and Kairi Sane facing Rhea Ripley and Io Sky, and they did lose. And then, of course, we had the Men's Crown Jewel Championship where Cody Rhodes, for the second year in a row, well, it's only been going 2 years, but Cody Rhodes, in both years, being in that match against Seth freaking Rollins, and of course, Seth freaking Rollins did win the Men's Crown Jewel Championship. And of course, then, in my opinion, like I said, the best match in John Cena's retirement tour, it was John Cena versus AJ Styles, which ended up being, between the two men, they paid tribute to so many different people, using so many different people's finishing moves. John Cena used the Tombstone. He used a choke slam. He used a rock bottom. He used an RKO. And of course, one of the most emotional parts of the match, he used Sister Abigail in tribute to Bray Wyatt, the late great Bray Wyatt. And of course, John Cena looking understandably emotional after using that, and then seeing the Fireflies come out, and then obviously the crowd were singing he's got the whole world in his hands. A very emotional moment in that match. But yeah, what a match it was. And in the end, Cena hit the Tombstone, then hit an AA and beat AJ Styles. But it was just an emotional match. Or it was their last match, and John Cena obviously gets that big speech before the match. All these different things, and then he'd written one for AJ Styles for Alicia to read out, and she did, and it was a great match, emotional, and what a final match between the two men. Two of the greatest to ever grace a ring. AJ Styles living up to his name, his nickname. His nickname is the Phenomenal, AJ Styles, and he is phenomenal. Always has been. You know, and what a match it was, and what a great way for these two men to end their historic and amazing rivalry. I, there's not much else. Um, there's not much else I can really say about that. To be honest, it's them AJ Styles and John Cena speak for themselves. Not much else I need to say about that match. But yeah, that was Crown Jewel in Perth in 2025, and what a PLE it was. Um, I pass over to my co-host.
Yeah, it was a great PLE. I believe Cody won the Crown Jewel match, didn't he? He beat Gunter.
No, that was the year before.
Oh, sorry. Who won it this year? Sorry.
It was Seth Rollins versus Cody. No, and Seth won.
Sorry, say that again.
Seth versus Cody, and Seth won.
And Seth won. Yes, he did. Yes, my mistake.
And Stephanie won the women's.
Yeah, Stephanie won the women's, and obviously John Cena, AJ Styles. A great match, and obviously another person who has announced that he will be retiring this year. So, they're all disappearing. They're all disappearing. These great wrestlers, and AJ Styles certainly one of those. I wouldn't say he's underrated, but certainly one of those people who I feel doesn't get the credit he deserves. He is a bona fide Hall of Famer. He has been the top of the pile wherever he has gone, and it will be very sad when he hangs up his boots. But we'll see what the year transpires for him.
Yeah.
Please excuse me. I need to just dip out for a moment. I will return shortly, but please carry on.
No worries. So that was October. There was a few other shows in October, like WWE Evolve, Succession. Of course, WWE Evolve is like WWE's sort of developmental program. NXT is not really seen as a developmental program anymore. It's just seen as a third brand. So Evolve is the new developmental program, which I've never really taken much notice of. So feel free to put in the comments under the YouTube video, some of your favorite Evolve moments, and let me see what I'm missing out on. Of course, there was a few of the NXT shows. There was, of course, as always, around Halloween. There was a Halloween Havoc, NXT Halloween Havoc, and then there was, yeah. So, yeah. So then we get to November. So we're getting towards the end of the year now, the year of wrestling. And after this, of course, like I said, we're going to be talking about our personal highlights of 2025. So the things that we have done that have stuck out in our mind, and and then we'll talk about what we're looking forward to in 2026, and then that'll be it. But yeah, of course, I'm just looking here. There was Saturday night's main event on November 1st. Let's have a look what that entailed. So you had so actually John Cena didn't appear on this one, which is quite surprising. But you had of course Seth Rollins had to vacate the championship because he got injured. For real this time. He tore his shoulder, or it was something like that anyway, and he's going to be out until at very least like March, so he should be back for WrestleMania. But whether he'll actually do anything at WrestleMania, that's still up in the air, of course. So he had to vacate the championship, and CM Punk versus Jey Uso. They faced each other for the vacated World Heavyweight Championship, and CM Punk did win, and is still the champion to this day. Other memorable moments. Jade Cargill faced Tiffany Stratton, the newly heel turned Jade Cargill, who was now being treated as this monster heel, defeated Tiffany Stratton and ended the very lengthy reign of Tiffany Stratton, who we haven't seen since because she also has an injury. I think it's a knee injury. It was a squash match. Tiffany couldn't do much because she legitimately did have a bad injury, not a bad injury, but an injury nonetheless that has kept her out up until now. We also had an undisputed WWE Championship match between Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre, and there was a stipulation where if Cody Rhodes got disqualified or counted out, he lost the title. Well, he didn't. He didn't get counted out or get disqualified, and he retained the championship. And that was Saturday night main event, and no John Cena match, which is quite surprising, but it's not classed as a PLE, so he doesn't have to be at this show. So yeah, we of course had Raw. There was a Raw main event in November as well, where John Cena was in Boston for one last time on Raw in November, and in his very final Boston appearance, he of course had to have a match. Dominic Mysterio interrupted him, and Adam Pearce. Triple H, who was in the ring, who introduced John Cena for his very final appearance. Triple H made the match. Dominic Mysterio versus John Cena for the Intercontinental Championship. Of course, the Intercontinental Championship being the only championship that John Cena hadn't won, and it was the one championship he needed to become a Grand Slam champion, which, of course, somebody like John Cena had to become a Grand Slam champion before he retired, surely. So they had the match. John Cena did indeed defeat Dominic Mysterio for the championship, which then resulted in the week after, where John Cena's very final appearance in Madison Square Garden. He faced he was interrupted by Dominic again, and the match between the Judgment Day, Finn, JD, and Dominic Mysterio, versus John Cena, Rey Mysterio, and who else was it? Was it Jey Uso? No, it was Sheamus. Where it was John Cena, Sheamus, and Rey Mysterio versus the Judgment Day, JD, Finn, and Dominic Mysterio. Of course, John Cena, Sheamus, and Rey Mysterio did win that match. Very, very good to see them teaming up, and it was a good match. And then this whole rivalry with Cena and Dominic Mysterio led to them having a match at War Games, which we will now get on to talking about. So it was, of course, in November, as always, Survivor Series War Games. It was in San Diego, California, in Petco Park. Never been in Petco Park before, so it was the first time. But yeah, so we obviously had the War Games, the Women's War Games match, which included AJ Lee in her second match. It was AJ Lee, Rhea Ripley, Io Sky, Alexa Bliss, and Charlotte Flair, who faced Becky Lynch, Asuka, Kairi Sane, Nia Jax, and Lash Legend, and the team of AJ Lee, Rhea Ripley, Io Sky, Alexa Bliss, and Charlotte Flair defeated Becky Lynch, Asuka, Kairi Sane, Nia Jax, and Lash Legend. It was a good match, and I do enjoy the War Games matches, so it was good to see them win. Of course, I'm a big fan of AJ Lee, so of course I wanted AJ Lee's team to win. We then had, of course, the Dominic Mysterio versus John Cena match for the Intercontinental Championship. Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez were at ringside, and of course, the returning Liv Morgan helped Dominic Mysterio defeat John Cena for the Intercontinental Championship, and that therein drew to a close John Cena's very final PLE match, because of course Saturday Night Main Event, where he did have his final match, isn't classed as a PLE. So then, and that drew to a close the final PLE of the year as well. Then we had Nikki Bella, who had recently turned heel, by she'd been helping Stephanie and been on Stephanie's side and had Stephanie's back for weeks and weeks on end. She then turned heel on Stephanie 2 weeks prior, I think it was, to this match. Stephanie demanded a match against Nikki Bella, put her Women's World Championship on the line, and of course defeated Nikki Bella. We then had the main event, the Men's War Games match. It was it was Team Vision versus Team Punk. Brock Lesnar, Drew McIntyre, Logan Paul, Bron Breakker, and Bronson Reed, the Vision, facing CM Punk, Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns, and the Usos, Jay and Jimmy. What a match it was! And in the end, this masked man, who we had no idea who he was, we do now, but we didn't, came out and attacked CM Punk and helped Bron Breakker pin CM Punk, and the Team Vision won the match. And that was your November. What episode of Raw was it? That it was in December, I think. Yeah, it must have been. So the masked man unmasked himself in December, which we will get to shortly. But I don't want to skip over November and move on to December until my co-host is back and able to talk about November. So until he is back, just while we wait for him, I'm going to take a short break. Just a toilet break and a drinks break. But hopefully, by the time I get back, my co-host will be back. So I'll be back shortly. Hello. We are back. Sorry about that. For the long break, my co-host wanted to finish his food before we got back, and that's absolutely fine. So yeah, we were talking about November before we went off for a break. I said everything I wanted to say about November. So I'll pass over to my co-host so he can talk about November.
Thank you. The most memorable bit of November, Cena's final appearance in Madison Square Garden, the home of, as they call it, the Mecca of boxing, a venue synonymous with the WWE. And, for one of its greatest stars to fight one last time at Madison Square Garden was a historic moment. And obviously, he became a Grand Slam champion. He got his hands on a Intercontinental belt. We couldn't really end the year without seeing John Cena win at least another
Yeah,
piece of.
that wasn't at Madison Square Garden.
No, I know that was
Yeah,
before.
that was in Boston.
That was in Boston, his home turf. Um, yeah, and the reality set in that this was it for John Cena, and Dominic Mysterio getting the rub, as it were. Getting the win over Cena as well with a little help from his
At War Games, of
girlfriend,
course.
and um, that was the month that was November.
Anything to say about the War Games PLE?
Good PLE, from what I remember. Good women's match. The faces beating the heels. I can't remember too much what happened in the men's match.
The Masked Man, of course.
Yes, the masked man who.
We will get to in a minute because he unveiled himself in December.
Yeah, and it wasn't who we thought it was going to be or who we wanted it to be, and everybody was left unimpressed. But yeah, we'll get on to that.
Okay, so we come to the final month of the year, the final month of wrestling in 2025, and of course a very poignant month in wrestling, and of course a very emotional month in wrestling as well. And I don't even obviously need to use my phone for this, but of course the final ever match of John Cena's career. Um, it was a decent Saturday night main event. But of course, really, I felt sorry for the other people that were wrestling on that card because nobody else really was there to watch them. They were all there to see Cena's very final match, and it very much felt like the first three matches of that PLE, not PLE, of that show was the pre-show, and then John Cena and Gunter's match was the main show. Um, and that's no dig at anybody else who was on that card. They were very good, decent matches, but it was all about Cena that night, and what a match it was. They put on a good match, John Cena and Gunter, and of course, what is a very poignant moment now. John Cena smiling and then tapping out at the end of the match. Nobody wanted to see Cena tap out, but the way he did it was genius. He smiled as if he'd come to terms with the fact that this was it, and he tapped out, and you know he didn't give up. He just couldn't go anymore. He'd give all he could give, and very sad. And then obviously everyone came out to say goodbye to him afterwards, and you know, so many people so many superstars and refs and stuff like that, and a lot of them in tears. Michael Cole was proper sobbing as well. I saw that. Of course, Michael Cole saying that without John Cena, he probably wouldn't be where he is in his career. Considers John Cena a very close friend. It was emotional, and then obviously Cena got that tribute video after as well. Very emotional month for wrestling. And obviously the big moment was obviously John Cena retiring and having his final match. I mean, there was another moment that happened, but we'll touch on that very briefly after we've talked about Cena. But yeah, very emotional, and um, I it very much felt like people from you know my sort of generation, it very much felt like our childhood finally was over, had died, because people from my sort of generation grew up, who were wrestling fans, grew up watching John Cena from a very young age. I was 10 when John Cena made his debut, and I was always a fan of Cena. I never understood why he got so much hate. I understood it to an extent because obviously he was always winning, and he was sort of always on top and always getting opportunities. So I got it to an extent, but I never understood why people hated on him as much as they did. You know, um, I was always a fan, never ever turned my back on him. And he definitely is, one of the goats. There's no doubt about it. And wrestling will now have a big hole in it without Cena, and it's a hole that I don't think anybody will ever be able to fill because there will never be another Cena, and I don't think there'll ever be another superstar on the level of Cena. Um, it just won't happen. But yeah, that's my sort of say on the whole Cena retiring thing. There is another moment that happened, which we'll touch on briefly, but I'll pass over to my co-host so he can say his bit about Cena.
Yeah, I mean, it was truly the end of an era. As you said, it was like the end of a childhood moment. John Cena's career was one of those that we practically grew up with from start to finish. And indeed, if that was the final time he was to be in the ring, because as we have seen infamously with other wrestlers, it's not always necessarily been the be all and end all. But if, I'm taking his word for it. If that was the last time, what a run it's been. And, seeing all those superstars come out, notably the likes of Triple H, Shawn Michaels,
Stephanie McMahon.
Stephanie McMahon, who was presenting the show, as it were. She specifically requested to do so.
Cody and CM Punk giving the
Cody and
titles
CM
to
Punk giving him the
Cena.
title symbolically. I don't know if Roman Reigns was out there that night,
I
but
didn't see him.
he was in the tribute video, as were others. And the Undertaker was there. I think I said that. Triple H was there. Shawn Michaels was there. You have Kevin Owens there as well in the audience.
Trish
Yeah,
Stratus, Eve
Trish
Torres,
Stratus, Eve Torres,
Elias,
was
Booker
there as
T,
well. Booker T, Zack Ryder
Kurt
was there.
Angle.
Kurt Angle was back. Of course, who John Cena faced in his first ever match on WWE television. So, yeah, it was a poignant moment. Also, Michael Cole, also, it was nice of him to mention, his colleagues, past colleagues he had commentated alongside. It was very nice to see, Jerry the King Lawler and Jim Ross get a mention. Jim Ross, of course, himself either is retiring this year or has now retired from commentary duties. Somebody who was, I would say, moved on from WWE in unfortunate circumstances, but he is a legend. So yeah, he didn't say anything on the mic afterwards. I don't think he needed to. It was just one of those moments that spoke for itself, and he left his shoes in the ring and then walked to the back, and that was it. Just like that, that was it. The end of John Cena's career, and yeah, never to be forgotten. Look forward to what the rest of his career holds in terms of his acting. I'm sure he's now an ambassador for WWE. He signed a 5-year contract. He mentioned. Yeah, I am sure we will see John Cena again on W. I mean, we did just recently. He did an interview with Cody Rhodes for his podcast. I'm sure we will see John Cena again at some point. Whether it's for a Hall of Fame induction or whatever. But for now, that is the end of John Cena's in-ring career. And I've had the privilege of meeting John Cena. I've had the privilege of seeing him wrestle at a WrestleMania. Got a couple of signed belts off him and a signed book. He is a superstar. He is one of the greats.
Hmm.
And what a privilege it was.
Absolutely. But yeah, there's at least one more WWE moment that I want to touch on before we end the year of wrestling, at least in WWE. And that was the moment that the masked man who interfered in the War Games match revealed himself. And it was none other than Austin Theory. Not, I wasn't that bothered, to be honest. I had a feeling it was him, but I wasn't that bothered. And I quite like his new theme. That's probably the only good thing going for him. But yeah, not really that bothered. I do have a feeling that he's potentially working for Seth, and he's been given the task of destroying the Vision from within. I think that's a way they could go. Also, would be a good way of turning Austin Theory face, because I think that's what he needs. I think he would be better as a face, because being a heel is just not working out for him. So he needs to try being a face. But yeah, that's really it for me in terms of WWE of 2025. Do you want to say anything about the Masked Man?
Not really. It wasn't who I thought it was going to be, but there you go. You never get what you want in life, but
Yeah. Okay, so before we move on from the wrestling stuff, I believe there's two moments you want to talk about in December from another company.
yeah, from AEW, MJF winning the AEW Championship yet again. In my honest opinion, he is their prized asset.
Yeah, I think without
He,
him, they'd be fucked.
he is their Erling Haaland, as it were.
Yeah.
He is, the moment his contract is up and he heads over to WWE, that will be the end of AEW, in my opinion. And someone else who I'm a big fan of, who this over this past year, Willow Nightingale, puts on good matches. Has a good personality, popular with the fans. Finally, got her hands on a singles belt. She's currently a tag team champion, and she's now the TBS women's champion, beating Mercedes Moné. So that was a good moment. But otherwise, that's basically it with AEW. I can't really remember much else going on this year. But I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you. So yeah, that's it with the year in wrestling. Lots of moments. Obviously, the big part of wrestling in 2025 was the John Cena retirement tour. But me and my co-host had discussed this off stream, and we both agreed that it's not been the best year for wrestling. Whether it's WWE, whether it's AEW, it's not been the best year, and it could have been one of the best years, because this retirement tour of John Cena's could have gone so much better for numerous reasons. I'm not saying it's been bad by any means, but it could have been so much better. So yeah, it's not been a great year for wrestling in terms of AEW and WWE. I don't know about any other companies, but yeah, it is what it is, and hopefully 2026, we're heading for better things in terms of wrestling. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about wrestling in 2025. So we have been streaming for nearly 3 hours, so I don't really want to be going for much longer. So we'll get through the next few parts that we're going to talk about, hopefully relatively quickly. But yeah, I wanted to just talk about mine and my co-hosts' personal highlights from 2025. So the things that have really stuck out to us and the things that we really enjoyed doing in 2025. So would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, I mean, I as I said, I got to go to a couple of WWE shows. Saw John Cena, part of John Cena's final UK appearances. In terms of sport, I went to the FA Cup final, which didn't turn out well for my team.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there were other personal highlights, but we'll come on to those in a minute. I'll hand back to you.
Well, I never went to any WWE shows or anything like that. Never went to watch any football. But there was a fair few things that I did in 2025 that I really enjoyed. Yeah. The first thing I'll talk about before I pass back to you is I mean probably the biggest highlight for me for 2025 was going to see the newly reunited and hopefully for a while reunited Oasis. One of my favorite bands, if not my favorite band of all time. I grew up listening to them. My mum and my dad loved them, so I grew up listening to them when I was a very young child in the 90s, and it's just stuck with me. And I've been a massive, massive fan. And unfortunately, they split up, and for years and years and years, I was really clamoring for them to get back together so I could go and see them because one of my regrets was never seeing them live, and I thought I'm never going to get to see them because they're never going to get back together. And I was on the verge of going to see them individually, getting tickets to see them individually because that was the best it was going to get. Not that that's bad by any means, but you know what I mean. And of course, then they announced they were getting back together, which nobody thought would ever happen. But they put their differences aside. They're a lot older now, a lot more mature. Their mum had a big part to play in it as well because she said that before she passes away, which she isn't ill or anything like that, but she isn't getting any younger. She wanted her sons to be brothers again. Wanted them to not necessarily reunite Oasis, but just reunite as brothers. So and that's what they did, for their mum, which I think is really nice. And of course, it was a bit awkward for them to start with, as you can see in the first couple of shows. They didn't know how to act with each other. But as the tour progressed, they just got closer and closer and closer, and they were hugging all the time, laughing with each other. Liam grabbed Noel's ass a few times. It was they seemed like they got back to being like brothers and having brotherly banter, and it was good to see. And like I say, it was a personal highlight of mine to go and see them this last year. I never thought I would get to see them live, and to the fact that I got to see them live at Eaton Park in Manchester, where they are from, not just seeing them in Eaton Park in Manchester, but also being in front standing as well, so being close. Wow, it was amazing, and I will always cherish that memory. And hopefully this year they will announce more dates, hopefully, and I'll get to see them again this year. But yeah, it was definitely a personal highlight for me to see them live. Definitely the best gig I've ever been to. No comparison, absolutely no comparison. Um, and yeah, it's been quite a good year for me, really, in terms of seeing bands live. But I'll get into that a bit in a little bit. I'll pass back to you.
Thank you. I also was lucky enough to get to see Oasis live. Not for the first time. I saw them when they did their homecoming gig at the Etihad back in 2005.
Mm.
And then I saw them this time at Wembley. It was spectacular. Much like you, Tom, I grew up listening to Oasis. They're my favourite band of all time. Part of our Mancunian heritage, as it were. And it was just great to see them back together after so long. After all the fights, the controversy. for a lot of people, this was their first time seeing Oasis. Hopefully, not the last time, but at least this time we got to see them, get along, do what they do best. And, they were clearly enjoying themselves, which they weren't towards the end of their previous, reunions. So that was good. It was a good year of music for me as well. I went to a number of gigs. Back at the start of the summer, I went to watch Guns N' Roses at Wembley. Again, a band that I've always wanted to see. One of my two favorite hits they played, "Knocking on Heaven's Door" and "Sweet Child of Mine." I then went to a private gig, would you believe, at Twickenham, as in the rugby stadium Twickenham, with the Kaiser Chiefs and none other than Johnny Wilkinson, England rugby legend, present there. It was part of a convention style thing, and a free gig with the Kaiser Chiefs. Got to meet Ricky Wilson.
Mm.
They performed they performed all their greatest hits, especially my favorite. I Predict a Riot and Ruby. And then I spent 2 months in Japan for work, business, and pleasure, where I also saw Billie Eilish in concert. Who I think is one of the best there is in terms of performing live, in terms of a
The best
talent.
there is, the best there was, the best there will be.
Indeed, no, I think she justifiably is. She is
Mm.
justifiably up there in terms of her talents. And then when I returned in October, I got to see Lady Gaga at the O2 again. A legend, an icon, and her performance is outstanding. So I got to see some truly legendary acts this year. I have been blessed. In terms of, other personal highlights, I saw Usyk versus Dubois at Wembley, for the World Heavyweight Undisputed Heavyweight Championship, which Usyk won. I went to the conference playoff final between Oldham Athletic and Southend, and Oldham Athletic, for the first time in their history, got a win at Wembley and got promoted back to the Football League. And yes, touching upon travels, I not only was in Japan, but indeed I went to 12 different countries this year, 10 of which for the very first time. I set myself a target that before my birthday, I wanted to visit 10 new countries. And even statistically, within a 5-week period between the 25th of September and the 10th of November, I was actually in 12 different countries, would you believe, for a mixture of business, work, and pleasure. So, as I said, started off the summer in Japan, did loads of exciting stuff, including watching some sumo wrestling and getting to cuddle lots of different animals. The animal cafes are quite a thing in Japan. So, what are the animals that are covered? Cats, dogs. I gave a meerkat a belly rub, as in, meerkats, those
Yeah.
wild animals in, in Africa. That was pretty hilarious. The noises the meerkat made as well was pretty funny. And it was quite a funny thing. It escapes from its pen and watching the person running the cafe chasing after the meerkat. And the meerkat was making all these weird noises as though it was like when you tickled its belly, it just made these squeaky noises to express its delight. There were rabbits as well, an armadillo. I tried to stroke a toucan, those birds with those huge beaks, but it wasn't having it.
Mm.
No matter how much I tried to distract it with food or whatever, it was always ready to snap my finger. Same with an owl. I put my finger in a cage. There was an owl there, and it was eyeing it up like it was a mouse or a sausage.
Yeah.
Stroked some hedgehogs. What else did I stroke? Oh yes, the one that was the most memorable of all. A dream that I always wanted to stroke this animal or get up close to it. Penguins. At Penguin Cafe. There were these three African penguins. I got to communicate with one of them because it communicates by making braying noises like a donkey. So I just did that back at one of the penguins, and it communicated back at me. Um, yeah, saw some great sights in Japan. Had a great time. Japan is a country I love a lot, as my co-host knows. Well, the host knows. Um, yeah, I love Japan. Great place. So yeah, what were the 12 countries that I visited this year? So Japan in order. So I went to Japan, and then on the way back, I stopped over in Shanghai. Uh, Went out the airport, went around Shanghai for a couple of hours, then back to the airport to get my flight. I flew from there to Brussels in Belgium. I stayed overnight there, had a brief tour of Brussels, then took the train the next morning back to London. And then a couple of weeks later, I was in Italy, in Milan for a business trip. I then took a trip over the border into Switzerland, a small town called Chiasso in Switzerland. Nothing exciting, but I just wanted to go there because to say that I went to Switzerland. Um, and then went back into Italy after my trip in Milan. Went to a country called San Marino. For those that don't know, it's a landlocked country completely surrounded by Italy. It claims to be the oldest republic in the world. Great place, great mountain views, fresh air. Hope to be going again next month. Then went to Rome, and at the same time visited the Vatican City, which is also considered a country. Amazing place to visit if you haven't. The Vatican Museum, brilliant. Didn't get to go inside St. Peter's Basilica. The queues were massive. It was also the same day that His Majesty King Charles III was visiting the Vatican, so a lot of areas of the Vatican was closed off and there was huge traffic. So, yeah. And then a few days later, I went off to Norway on another business trip. Bizarrely, as soon as I got off my flight in Norway, I realised I'd forgotten something, and lo and behold, I'd forgotten my wallet. So I had to manage a few days in Norway without my wallet. I then took an early morning flight on my final day, early morning train ride to Stockholm, to Gothenburg in Sweden. Spent the whole day in Gothenburg, and then flew back from there. So where does that take us up to? That takes us up to 9 countries. Then I went to Germany, Munich for a conference. Went to Salzburg in Austria for an evening. Got to see the sights very quickly, and then got back on the train back to Munich. Including got to see Mozart's home. Sorry, my voice is leaving me. And then I spent a few days in a place called Liechtenstein, which is a small landlocked country. Always wanted to visit. And I must say, I've been saying this repeatedly since I came back. It has some of the best tap water that I have ever tasted anywhere in the world. Fantastic alpine fresh tap water from the Alps. It was great. And that was me visiting 12 countries. I hope you guys get to do some traveling. Whether it's for work, whether it's for pleasure. Yeah, I'm hoping to do some more traveling this year. I'll be going back to Italy for the Winter Olympics. I'll be volunteering there, so that's going to be in Milan. I hope to revisit San Marino, visit the new friends that I made there. I'll be going back to Belgium later in the year for a conference. I have applied to volunteer at the World Cup I've selected Canada as my preferred destination, but we'll have to wait and see on that. Otherwise, no other plans at the moment. But those were my personal highlights of 2025. Got to meet some more wrestlers, at various conventions. I met Chris Jericho, David Arquette, Jinder Mahal, Mark Henry. Who else did I meet? Mick Foley again. I can't remember who else. Oh, of course, Sting. Sting also retired again this year, in the sense that he retired from the in-ring competition in 2024, but this year he in 2025 he was doing his last ever convention appearances donning the face paint. So any future appearances he makes now, he will no longer be wearing the iconic face paint. So it was a privilege to get to meet him in the face paint, as it were. Yes. Did I do anything else exciting? I went to the premiere of The Naked Gun, the new Naked Gun movie with Liam Neeson and Pamela Anderson. I was sat right at the front row. They were there in front of me giving a speech. I didn't get to shake hands with them or speak to them. That would have been great, but it didn't happen. Can't think of anything else, really. That was it, really, for me in 2025.
Okay.
I guess I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you. Okay, so I before I get to the main part of my year, I had a relatively decent year of music as well. Saw Snow Patrol live early in the year. Absolutely amazing band live. I've been a fan of them for a long time, but and I know it was weird because how it came about, because I didn't even know that they were in Manchester, and I just happened to be on Ticketmaster because I was like, I sort of fancy going to a show of some kind, even if it was on my own. I was just like, I fancy just going to a show. So I went on Ticketmaster and I just had a look to see what was in the Co-op Live, which is the nearest arena to me, or one of the nearest arenas. There's obviously the Air Arena as well. But I was like, let me have a look to see what's on the Co-op Live, and I was like, if there's nothing on the Co-op Live, I'll look at the Air Arena. Anyway, I was looking through and I saw Snow Patrol, and I was like, oh, I quite like Snow Patrol. Let me have a look at the price of the tickets. The tickets were very reasonable. I bought a seated ticket. And I had a pretty good view. I was quite far back, but I was sort of in the middle, so I wasn't on either side. I was in the middle at the back, so I still got a good view because I literally, the stage was like right in front of me, so I still got a relatively decent view. What a show they put on! Not just the songs, but the show they put on itself, the light show and all that sort of stuff. It was amazing. What a show it was. Obviously, I told you about Oasis. I'm trying to think if there was any other bands that I saw, or any other artists that I saw that I can remember. No, not that I can think of. Well, apart from when I was in America, which is what I'm about to come on to next. My favorite highlight of 2025 is of course got to be my fifth visit to Orlando, in Florida. Went 3 times as a child, been 2 times as an adult. One was in 2023, the other was in 2025. Went with the same person, one of my best friends. She's always wanted to go to Florida, to Orlando, to go to the Disney World and Universal and stuff like that. And I didn't need any convincing to go with her. So we went once in 2023, then we went last year. And the first time we went, it was amazing. I had never been as an adult, so to see it as an adult was completely different. Like it was weird, but a good weird. And then um, to go again in 2025, just 2 years later, which I didn't think we would do, was just as amazing. But the difference with the 2025 visit is there was a few different things that we did. So the first thing, well, not the first thing, but one of the things that we did that we hadn't done before was there was a new park to go to, a new Universal park called Epic Universe. It was a new Universal park where it had a Super Mario World. It had a Harry Potter section where they had a new Harry Potter ride, which was the I don't know if you've ever watched Harry Potter. I assume most people have, but obviously some people might not be a fan. But there's a segment, there's a not a segment, but there's parts in a few of the different movies where they're in the Ministry of Magic, where they go in these elevators that go up, down, left, right, all over the place. And the ride was based off the elevator rides that they had in the Ministry of Magic. So, but it wasn't just the ride that was amazing. The Ministry, they made the Ministry of Magic, and it looked just like it looked like in the film. It looked amazing. It was like I was on the set. Like as a massive Harry Potter fan, like I am, it was like I was in awe. I couldn't get enough of it, and the amazing thing was to get to the actual ride part, you had to walk through all these different rooms of the Ministry of Magic to get to it, and it took you a good like 5 maybe 10 minutes to walk through because not just were you walking through, but you were looking left, right, up, down, looking at everything. It was amazing. And then there was also a like a I don't know if I would call it a horror part. It was sort of a horror part because there was a haunted house and there was another ride as well, which was a really good ride. I can't remember what it's called now. But the haunted house was like it was a Frankenstein ride, which was a really 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 cool ride. But again, to get to the ride, you had to walk through this haunted house, so you were looking all over the place. It was amazing. And then the final part of it was a How to Train Your Dragon world. And I assume most of you heard of the How to Train a Dragon movie series. Uh, I've never really watched it before, but uh, I know about it, and there was some really cool rides there as well. So yeah, so that was really cool to do. Um, so yeah, that was a really big highlight of that holiday. But the biggest highlight of the holiday had to be the festival that me and my friend went to. It's called Rockville. It's in Daytona Beach every year in Florida, and we just so happened to be going at the same time that this festival was on. And my friend did say to me, should we do it? Should we do it? Shall we go to this festival? Like it's a 4-day festival. We both agreed that we would choose 2 days out of the four that we both would want to go to. We would check who's on them days, and then we would make an informed decision because we wouldn't be able to afford all 4 days. So we made an informed decision to just choose 2 of the days. Well, when the line we decided we were going to go even before the lineup was out because we just thought even if it's not like bands that were massive fans of, it's still an experience. So anyway, turns out that when the lineup came out, we were so incredibly lucky with who was actually ending up being in the lineup. So there was 2 nights where or two of the days where I wasn't that bothered about going. My friend, she liked one of the headline acts, but knew she was going to see them at Download Festival when she come back, so she wasn't that bothered about seeing them at the festival. So we chose 2 days, and we went to this festival, and uh, I've never been to a festival before, and I loved the experience. But let me paint a picture for you. So I don't know if any of you have ever been to Orlando before, but especially the time of year we went in May, it can get extremely hot around about that time of year. So when we went to Rockville, every day was at least 33 degrees. And the only part of shade that we could get at this festival, and they did have designated shade areas because they had to have them because it was that hot. They had to have designated shade areas with like fans and stuff like that because otherwise people are just going to pass out because of the heat, so they have to have these designated areas. But I kid you not, to get into these designated areas, especially on the first day, to get into these designated areas, these shadow areas, was so fucking difficult because everybody wanted to be in the shade because it was that hot. Everybody wanted to be in the shade, and it was ridiculous. And the second day wasn't so bad because they put up even more of these shade areas, so it wasn't as bad. You could get in them easier, but it was just so hot, and but it didn't stop me from having fun. And me and my friend absolutely loved it. And it was just really, really good, and it was such an experience. Especially, I mean, it's one thing going to a festival in the UK, but to go to a festival in America is something I never thought I would ever do. I want to go to a festival in the UK. I've wanted to do that for a few years now. And I thought, I would eventually do that, but never did I think I would go to a festival abroad before I even did one in the UK. That was just never ever something I thought I would do, but it was well worth doing. It was such an experience. And this, the bands I got to see, it was well worth going. So on the first day, there was lots of different bands. So there was lots of small bands. It was Rockville was a very much a sort of a festival where a lot of smaller heavy metal bands would come out of the woodwork and like play at this festival. So, and my friend who is a big heavy metal fan, she knew a lot of these bands. I didn't, but I didn't mind going along and listening to the music and stuff like that because it's an experience. But the first night, the two headline acts were um, one of the reasons I really wanted to go. So the first headline act was Good Charlotte, who I'm not a massive, massive fan of, but I do like them, so it was cool to see them live. And then the like the main headline act of night one is a band I've always wanted to see, one of my favorite bands of all time, and the fact that I got to see two of my favorite bands of all time in the same year is something I never thought I'd do. The only thing that would have made it better is if I was able to get tickets to see Coldplay when they were in the UK late on last year, which I unfortunately didn't manage to get tickets for. That would have just been the perfect year. But basically, the main headline act for night one was Green Day. And when I tell you that they are one of the best bands I've ever seen live, and I've not seen a lot, but one of the best bands I've ever seen live, that is not an understatement. It is the truth. Wow. Like, they are just incredible. They are just incredible. And they are just as good live as I thought they would be. They put on one hell of a show. Um, Billy Joel, is it Billy Joe, the lead singer of Green Day? I think that's his
Yeah.
name. He's just brilliant. He's so funny. And it wasn't just the songs they did, because the songs they did, of course, I loved, because I love most of their songs. It was the show they put on, amazing. And then day two, we did 2 days in a row. Day two, we went. Uh, uh, so there was a lot of the bands that day I'd never heard of. There was like one smaller band I'd heard of. Don't know how, but I had. But most of them I hadn't. But the main headline act I had heard of. And it was a bit of it was mixed feelings for me with this band. As much as I love this band, it was mixed feelings for me because the band in question was Linkin Park, and I've always been a massive fan of Linkin Park. And the reason I had mixed feelings was because I never got to watch Linkin Park when Chester was alive, and I loved Chester. And I never got to see them live when Chester was alive, and I would have loved to have seen them live when Chester was alive. Unfortunately, didn't get to. I saw them live when Emily was, with Emily being the front person of the band, and I will be honest, I'm not a massive fan of how she portrays or how she sings the older Linkin Park songs. The ones that she wrote and actually originally sang, pretty good. I mean, I'm not denying she's not, she's got a good voice. The difference is, Chester sang with emotion with these old songs because they meant something to him. These songs that she sings that he used to sing, she doesn't have any emotion because they don't mean anything to her because she didn't write these songs. You know what I mean? So it was mixed feelings for me on that day because I was a little bit upset because I was like, I wish I could have seen him live with Chester. But at the same time, I was enjoying myself, because they were good. Um, but yeah, and then that was it really. We did that, and then we headed back to Orlando and completed the rest of our holiday, going to all the different Disney parks and the different Universal parks, and yeah, and SeaWorld, and went to Busch Gardens as well. It was a full jam packed holiday. Um, really good. We stayed in a very decent hotel as well. The hotel was pretty good. Food wasn't too bad. They had a decent buffet on, every day. The unfortunate thing is my friend who I go with, she's vegetarian, and on the buffet every day they had a vegetarian option, but it wasn't always the best. For me, there was plenty, but there was only ever like one, at the most two vegetarian options, which I think was really shit. They should have had more. Um, but one thing I've noticed going with my friend who's a vegetarian is that Americans don't cater to vegetarians very well. And I think that's because a lot of Americans aren't vegetarians. I mean, uh,
Yeah, I agree. From my
what? I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
From my experience when I was in the States, living in the States, because I was briefly vegetarian for a while in my life. Yeah, America doesn't do vegetarianism very well.
No, and yeah, I felt sorry for her really, but she got by. And it didn't stop her from enjoying the holiday, and she still loves America. So, but yeah, I mean that they were my personal highlights of the year. I mean, getting to go to Orlando again, twice, in 3 years is something I never thought I'd do. So, it was amazing. But next time I go to America, probably when a certain president isn't president anymore, um, I won't be going to Orlando. I'll be trying somewhere different. I do want to go back to New York, but the next time I go to America, I want it to be somewhere that I haven't been before, and I'm thinking probably LA, because I really want to go to LA. But either LA or Las Vegas, either one. But that'll be a few years down the line. Anyway. But yeah, they were my personal highlights of the year. Yeah, it's not been a bad year for me. Um, I've had, like I said, Oasis, and then seeing Green Day in the same year, and just amazing. But yeah, um, they were my personal highlights. But we're nearly at the end here now. Sorry that we've been rambling on for as long as we have. We've been live 3 hours and seconds precisely. Sorry, 3 hours and 20 minutes. Sorry, not 20 seconds. Um, so we'll just touch on quickly what some of the things we're looking forward to this year. I think I can safely say, from the both of us, I think we'll both say this because we're both football fans. Of course, we're looking forward to the World Cup. We're hoping that our country, England, will have a good chance of winning. My co-host might even be volunteering in Canada at the World Cup, which would be an experience. But yeah, I can safely say we're both looking forward to that. Um, the Winter Olympics, of course, which, as my co-host has said, he's volunteering at. Um, Obviously, the continuing of the Premier League season. It's it'll be interesting to see how it ends up, because no one's really doing that well, and you know my team's doing better than it did last season. Who knows where they could end up? So, be interesting to see what goes on the rest of the season. Be interesting to see who wins the Champions League. Be interesting to see if my team can win the FA Cup. But yeah, it's should be a good year for football as well, in general, not just the Premier League, but World Cup as well. I'm trying to think of anything else that's happening next year that I'm looking forward to. Well, I'm planning on doing my driving this year. So that'll be an accomplishment if I can actually manage to do that. So that's something I'm looking forward to getting into. But that's about it for me. From from what I can think of. So I'll pass you over to my co-host.
Thank you. I mean, yes, the World Cup, the newly expanded 48 team World Cup for the first time being held in three countries: Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Could this be the year England finally bring it home after 60 years of hurt, as it were, as we like to say? Personally, I think they've got a very, very, very good chance. I reckon, with a favourable draw, depending on how the draw pans out, there's every chance they could reach the final. But some questions still remain. I think there are several teams out there who are pretty much the teams to beat. Spain, France, Argentina. Can't rule out Brazil, even if Brazil are not at their strongest at the moment. Um, I think it's going to be a very super competitive World Cup. You've got teams like Norway, who, with Erling Haaland in scintillating form. You've got a young German team, a solid Netherlands team. Colombia are being tipped by many to do very well. Who else have we got? Morocco got to the semi-finals last time and have very much improved since 2022. Could they go all the way again? Could they get to the semis again, or maybe further? Scotland have obviously returned to the World Cup since they last appeared in 1998. Might they cause an upset or two? It remains to be seen if Wales, Northern Ireland, and the Republic of Ireland can make it. But Wales and Northern Ireland are in the same side of the playoff draw, so both of them are not going to make it to the World Cup, but one of them could. I'm not sure who the other big team. Oh yes, of course, Portugal. Cristiano Ronaldo announcing that this will be his final World Cup. Might he be able to finally get the hands on the trophy that has eluded him for his entire career? Portugal certainly have one of the best attacking lineups in world football, but could their defence cost them? We've got the Winter Olympics coming up, which I'm volunteering at. Be heading there at the end of the month. Should be fun. I'm not a massive fan of winter sports, but it's an experience. You got the Commonwealth Games returning to Glasgow after a bit of, there was a lot of debate going on as to whether or not it was going to take place this year, but it is coming back in a restricted format. Returning to Glasgow. The last time it was in Glasgow in 2014. I was also coincidentally a volunteer there as well. But with fewer sports on the itinerary this year, and also quite significantly, the BBC has lost the rights to show the Commonwealth Games. So that's a massive blow for the event, because I'm not sure people are going to be subscribing to TNT Sport just to watch the Commonwealth Games. It's one of those events that thrived on the free coverage that it would get on the BBC. So it remains to be seen. The future of that event remains to be seen. The football season, obviously, reaches its second half. Earlier yesterday, my team dropped points again. 2 draws on the bounce now. Arsenal have a 6-point cushion at the top of the table. It is going to be a tense and tight title race. There is still a long way to go, but a number of big games in the next few weeks. Liverpool, Arsenal have got to play Liverpool and Manchester United. City have got Brighton on Wednesday before they play Manchester United. Again, the FA Cup third round takes place this weekend. I'll be coming up to watch that match against Man City and Exeter. Interestingly, I used to live in Exeter. I lived not far from St James's Park, where Exeter play their games. Went to watch them a few times, so it'd be interesting to go and watch them against Exeter. Interesting to see who wins the Champions League. Arsenal currently are top of the group phase, but I don't think there's any one team that's really. I don't know about you, but there's no one team that's really stood out at the moment.
No, not really.
I think there's at least 5 or 6 teams that could really win it. I hate to say it, but Arsenal are up there amongst the favourites. I would put City amongst the favourites. Bayern Munich have been in excellent form. Barcelona could do well. Real Madrid, you can never write them off. Nobody else really that stands out. PSG, of course, haven't had as good a season so far as they did last year, but can't rule them out. Can't rule out Liverpool or the other English sides. So that will be an interesting competition in terms of relegation from the Premier League. Wolves picked up a win the other day, or was it today? I can't remember. Yesterday, I can't remember, but they got their. Oh yeah, against West Ham, fellow relegation strugglers. West Ham have really tailed off in form. So it looks as though West Ham, Burnley, and Wolves could be going down. We shall see. Other sporting news: Tyson Fury has shock horror announced that he has come out of retirement and he's already training
Really?
for his
Wow, I'm
next.
surprised.
I think with Tyson Fury, it's just a case of he doesn't need to make announcements anymore because we don't really care. We don't take it seriously anymore.
Mm.
There were rumors about him and Joshua preparing for a fight later this year, with both of them having individual fights in Saudi Arabia building up to that. Of course, those of you who follow the news will be aware of the very tragic accident Anthony Joshua found himself in. And of course, from the sounds of it, he is lucky to have escaped with only minor injuries. He is, of course, recovering from that, so it will be understandable if there are no immediate, announcements regarding that potential matchup. Obviously, the F1 season again. I don't know if there's anything else that really stands out on the sporting calendar other than the usual suspects, like your tennis Grand Slams or anything like that. Is there anything that stands out for you?
No, not really.
Obviously, you've got the Super Bowl next month.
Yeah, which we will be doing a stream for.
Indeed, indeed. If you like cricket, you've got the T20 World Cup set to take place next month in India. Anything else that stands out? Anything else?
Not that I can think of.
I believe we've got an NBA game in London taking place next week. Not massive NBA fan.
No.
If I had a, my team is the New York Knicks, but again,
Yeah,
I'm not a fan massively of the NBA. That's about it, really. I can think of. In terms of other events, obviously, the world. I'm not going to touch too much on political stuff, but there is going to be a lot of stuff happening both home and abroad. And yeah, I just hope as well, if I can say this much, obviously the world is not in a great place at the moment, both home and abroad. I'm sure I speak for my co-host in that saying that we hope things will improve this year for the sake of everybody. Um, you know, that's all we can really ask for.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
well,
about it.
yeah.
Um,
Um, well,
and
are we,
obviously, looking forward to what WWE events happen this year.
yeah,
Who's gonna step up and sort of assume that sort of vacuum that's now been left by John Cena retiring.
mm,
I will say that I think Gunther has really played well his role of being the chief heel, as it were.
yeah, definitely.
Um, I think we needed a sort of heelish anti-hero type individual to kind of fill the gap left by the Undertaker as well.
Yeah,
Um, I think obviously we look forward to the return of Seth Rollins, a potential debut return of Chris Jericho. Might Kevin Owens return this year from injury?
yeah,
Who else have we got that's out injured? Or Tiffany Stratton.
hmm
Uh, Hopefully Naomi after she's given birth. Obviously had a maternity leave and everything. No doubt she will come back. Um, Obviously Bianca Belair's had a bit of a hiatus for a while, but I'm confident they will be bringing her back at some point. Um, will we see any more call ups from NXT?
mm.
What are your predictions for the year ahead?
Oof. Um, I don't know.
In terms of the Royal Rumble, who do you see winning the Royal Rumble? Because
I tell you what, it's really difficult this year to say.
I
I
think
honestly couldn't pick, and I like that. I like that. I like that there isn't an obvious choice.
maybe this year is the time for LA Knights. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've seen things about potentially LA Knight winning, potentially Sami Zayn, potentially Ron Breaker. A few different names. So
Or maybe Gunther finally gets his Royal Rumble win.
maybe. Um, in terms of the women, again, I've seen a few names floating about. Bailey. Um,
Well, Bailey won it a couple of years ago, so I
yeah, but
mean,
that doesn't mean she can't win it again.
no, but
Bailey, I've heard Bailey. Potentially Julia. Um,
Julia I would be down with.
uh, who else? Liv Morgan.
Mm,
There's been a few different names floating about again. So I honestly I couldn't tell you. I could not tell you. And I like that. I like that I can't predict it because I usually can, but I honestly can't this year. I like that. So
Maybe we might have Tiffany Stratton return at the Royal Rumble,
maybe,
or Bianca Belair.
yeah. um,
Um,
but yeah. Anyway, I think we need to wrap this up. Um, because we've been live over 3.5 hours now.
we have.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, thank you for joining us for the stream. If I can this year, I want to try and do one of these What's the News is at least once a month, but it all depends on obviously my schedule, my co-host schedule. But if we can do, we will do. My next stream will be. I'm not 100% sure about this, so don't hold me to this, but potentially will be the Royal Rumble. But it all depends because I usually go to my mates to watch it, but it's a bit up in the air this year about whether I'm actually going or not because it's on earlier. It starts at 7 o'clock our time, so it's a bit up in the air whether we'll be doing it. So that will be hopefully when I'll be next streaming, and then after that will be the Super Bowl stream. So yeah, some exciting streams coming up. But anyway, thank you for joining us for the final part of our 2-part 2025 wrap up. I'm sorry that we've rambled on a bit, but I hope you enjoy your 5 hours worth of wrap up. Of 2025. But yeah, thank you for joining us, and I will see you. We will see you hopefully at the end of the month for the Royal Rumble. Bye
See you.
bye.